Good morning and welcome to you, OTBAM on this Friday morning. How's it going? Owen Sheehan is alongside me. Owen, how are you doing?
A very good morning.
Busy texting somebody? Or
no, just sending a tweet promoting the show off my phone, which I'm sure is available on Twitter now. A very good morning to you. Welcome back.
Thanks very much. It's been a while.
It has been. Did you enjoy your extended break?
I had an extended time out of the office, yeah. It didn't really feel so much like a break as such, but I wasn't here. But I'm back, and I understand that the show was just cancelled in my absence, that you just felt that the quality couldn't be maintained, and so what was the point, really?
Exactly. How did you find out?
Well, it wasn't on when I tuned in.
It's almost as if we're a front-facing company.
Life is good?
Life is great. Can't complain. 2019 off to a great start.
Really? Why?
Yeah, just life in general. It's fantastic, isn't it?
Be more specific, on our audience demands to know why life is so good in your world.
Well, life isn't bad, is it?
They've got to know you over the last 18 months. They know what sort of makes you tick, what gets the blood boiling a little bit, you know, what makes you happy. So give them a little insight into why life is so good.
To be honest with you, I was kind of being a bit flippant, to be honest. If I was actually going to do
it's not like taxi conversation
self-analysis of this, well, it kind of feels like one, to be honest. Like this morning when I woke up and I saw that Andy Murray was going to leave our world, I'm not sure does that affect my life. I'm not sure.
Andy Murray's not dying. Can we just put that on record straight off the bat?
Well, leaving the public consciousness as a professional sports person, I'm not sure does that make me feel any worse. Does that actually hamper my good start to 2019? I just feel pretty good. Is there anything wrong with that?
No, I mean, I just wanted to know why. That is really it. Andy Murray is, in case people have sort of breaking overnight, he's obviously getting set for the Australian Open, and it seems like it may well be his last match in the next few days. He is struggling pretty badly with a hip injury. He was pretty emotional when he addressed the press yesterday. It's a clip that we might be able to bring you in just a moment's time. But he says for the last 20 months he's been battling hard against this hip injury. It's caused him a lot of pain, and ultimately he's going to succumb to it. He's going to try and get through the next few months and try and play as far as Wimbledon and beyond if he can. But breaking down at the press conference yesterday, saying that actually his last match may come in the last couple of days. Take a look.
The pain is too much, really. Yeah, it's not something that I want to. I don't want to continue playing that way. I spoke to my team and I told them that, I can't keep doing this. I said to my team, look, I think I can kind of get through this until Wimbledon. That is where I would like to. That's where I would like to stop playing.
Yeah, he had to leave the press conference yesterday to go off and compose himself and then come back and give people the full detail as to what was going on. It wasn't something I was aware of, that the severity of which was about to end his career, I have to say.
Yeah, and getting to Wimbledon is an ambitious enough target by the sounds of that, isn't it? It doesn't actually sound like that's going to be something that's definite. When I saw the quotes this morning, it was like Andy Murray to retire after Wimbledon. I'd be surprised if he makes it that far. But then again, he is somebody who has battled through many things in his life and has actually become accustomed to the idea of pain more than a lot of other tennis players. And it's not easy to say that, because when you read any tennis autobiography or you listen to anybody speak about their experiences in the professional game, their relationship with pain is probably the most important relationship they have as a professional tennis player. But Andy Murray knows it better than most. Like Kevin Mitchell in The Guardian this morning, kind of doing a retrospective on his career, that the first time he came on the scene, the first thing he remembers Andy Murray talking about is back pains. That, of course, he was a kid at the time. He says it's growing pains in the back, but they were particularly excruciating. And then this particular injury, which is one of a slew of injuries that he's had during his career, has troubled him for quite some time. This right hip has been something that's brought Andy Murray down over the last couple of years, and you do have to say it has been a bit of a spiral downwards from the end of 2016. It's been a couple of extremely tough years for him. And I guess when it comes to this sort of stuff, we're never quite sure what's going on. And when it's somebody like Andy Murray, particularly the way he's covered in the United Kingdom, there's always such a spotlight that every little bit of information that can be possibly got out of him has been published over the last couple of years. But I do think there was kind of an essence of kind of pulling the cork off the top of the bottle there this morning, and he just let all the emotion come out.
Yeah, it was. The context was that he had been had a warm-up match with Novak Djokovic and had to withdraw from that, and there were photographs of that as well, and he looks pretty upset, I suppose, on the court side afterwards. And it may have been that some of that was kind of still bubbling under with him, that he was still frustrated with that and maybe sort of said too much at some point or another. I don't know. Only time is going to tell. He, as you say, it may well be his opening round of the Australian Open against pretty tough opponent as well. May end up being his last. And I have to say, one of the thoughts that struck me this morning was that I was kind of disappointed with myself that I hadn't appreciated Andy Murray a little bit earlier. I always sort of, for a large part of his career, just saw him as this moany sort of, the plucky underdog. A large sort of dour Scot, and obviously the British media sort of darling of times, and that's never going to endear itself to an Irish audience, obviously. But actually, he's really, in a lot of ways, none of those things. He's really sort of anti-drugs and not afraid to be kind of outspoken about it. He's got a really large dollop of dry wit and is actually a pretty likeable character, it turns out. It just took me about 15 years to figure it out. Yeah,
the irony is that you might look at those characteristics. I think a lot of people would agree with you that they didn't instantly warm to him, but those characteristics that you say aren't exactly something that an Irish audience would warm to, when in actual fact the very characteristics that Andy Murray has that are likeable are things that Irish people tend to like. I think his sense of humour is brilliant, and I don't think it was immediately identifiable that that's exactly the way he operates. And like we could easily be sitting here talking about a guy who was the darling of the British press and what has he ever achieved, and it did look, if you were a cynic for a time in his career, that was going to be the case when he got to his mid-20s, and it still looked like there was a bit of a gap between him and the rest, and he managed to close that and he managed to get his win. And you kind of look at him as the post-peak Federer and Nadal era, if I can use that phrase, because I don't think, if you look at, like, say, this time last year, it was
I know, but I think the point stands, yeah.
Like, we've had a Federer and Nadal final, we've had them coming back to their peak since Murray's
But there
peak.
is a post-Federer and Nadal era.
Yeah, and it was Djokovic and it was Murray that rolled.
So for all that, he might have won more almost.
Potentially, if it wasn't for Novak Djokovic, you certainly would have won more. I would definitely say that. But you kind of look at the other of the big four around him at the peak, and Federer far more talented as an actual ball striker in terms of the grace. Nadal, when it comes to power, far better athlete, and then Djokovic as this absolute freak, as a man who would never be rumbled in terms of his mental fortitude, and also kind of a mix of the Federer and Nadal style of the grace and the power that he has. There's no question for me, out of those four players, Andy Murray is a comfortable fourth when it comes to natural ability.
Yeah, he'll never be described as a great of the game. He'll be forgotten about in the context of the game in a world sense at some point.
Like in a British sense.
Oh, in a British sense, no. He'll live forever. I mean,
like obviously people can say Fred Perry, whatever. That's going to be up for debate. But I just really think that for somebody in that position to win what he did, despite the fact that there was a gap between him and the other big three in tennis at the time, it just really says a lot for the character of the guy that he managed to fight through that ceiling, because it could have so easily been a situation of settling for what he's got and being famous, being rich, and not winning that Grand Slam, and then he ended up winning a handful of them.
And again, he's not dead. He's just probably going to have to retire from the game. And
no, his career is almost over. That's why we're talking about his career. We're not talking about the life of Andy Murray.
You just alluded to the fact at the top that he might be disappearing from our worlds. And actually, the reality is that we'll probably hear more from Andy Murray post his retirement than we ever did during it, because he can be absolutely certain that he's going to get involved in the media.
He's an excellent pundit. Himself and Tim Henman did one of the days in Wimbledon last summer, and it was one of the best hours of television ever. To be fair, actually, I say he's an excellent pundit. It was only funny because the two lads were just ripping the piss out of each other for the whole time. So we'll wait to see what his analysis is like.
It was one of the best hours of television ever, by the way.
Yeah, it was.
You're standing by that one?
Yeah.
One of the other things that we're going to spend a good bit of this morning talking about, obviously, is the Champions Cup of the weekend. And it did get me to thinking yesterday about how a lot of the quotes that I'm reading, and I see Ronan O'Gara is echoing the point in the Examiner this morning again, that Munster have been looking over the fence over the last couple of years about the success of Leinster and how that is going to be such a motivating factor for them, as we know it was, conversely, for Leinster when Munster were 2-0 in that regard in terms of the Heineken Champions Cup. And it just got me to thinking about how so many... I don't normally subscribe to the, we're so different to everybody else in the planet when it comes to sport, but actually in a sporting context, we are in a lot of ways. We do require that sort of chip on the shoulder stuff on. I think they've written us off, they're better than us, nobody's giving us a shout type stuff seems to work for an Irish teams in a way that you don't really see a Manchester City saying, well, we've got to we've got to win the Premier League because they're writing us off, or they can just get about their work because they're a sort of professional outfit in a way that very few, and there are absolute exceptions to this rule, but in a way that very few Irish teams are. I mean, you would absolutely include the current Dublin football setup in that they don't seem to require the being written off thing, primarily because who the hell is writing Dublin off at the minute? They can just say...
Just about to say that. And who wrote Manchester City off last year before they won the title? Maybe if people had actually written them off, they would then come out and say, we've been written off, everybody's written us off, but the point is, they weren't written off. No,
that's what I'm saying, that actually they can just get about their business in a professional manner and say that we don't require any of that stuff, we can just be professional about it, and we've got, great competition for places, and that's the thing that drives us on. We don't need to put the headlines on the wall.
But maybe it's not an Irish thing. Maybe it's just legitimately Irish teams are in a situation where it's right to write them off on a couple of occasions. Like with these rugby teams, say you go back 2 seasons at this point, 3 seasons at this point, when things were going desperately for them. A lot of those players were still there. A lot of those players were still starters for both of the provinces when it comes to Munster and Leinster. They'll remember the times when they were written off because they put in crap performances.
Yeah.
So,
but like Munster are not a ridiculous shout to win the Heineken Cup this year. They're like fourth favourites. So it's not like nobody's writing them off. Like they're fourth favourites there.
Yeah.
Yeah,
we do enjoy that complex of feeling that the world is against us and then fighting back against it. But that's not to say that the world being against you doesn't mean that they're correct. Quite often, the writing off of these teams is the right thing to do. Like when it comes to, say, if the Irish football team happen to have success over the next couple of years, you could easily see Seamus Coleman coming out and saying, well, everybody wrote us off. Yeah. That's because we were right to write you off because you were, like it was a terrible year for Irish football last year. So, I'd agree with you to a certain extent, but I would say that the reason why we don't hear Manchester City talk about being written off is because they had a bloody good year last year and not many people actually write them off. Now, if they go on to win the Premier League, they might pick up pieces that said they relied too much on Fernandinho, and we'll see what their Irishness is really like at the end of the season.
What I'm saying is they don't fall off a cliff edge because people aren't talking about them in that way. They're still very competitive. Limerick Hurler is another example of that didn't have to go to the well, and the famous thing, if you've got to lose a final to win one, they didn't have the baggage of the previous 50 years, whatever it was, since Limerick had previously won the All-Ireland Championship, that young group could just go out and win it. So, interesting to get your thoughts this morning on that. The old chip on the shoulder for Irish sport. Is it something that's required? And also on Andy Murray, your thoughts and feelings on his, it seems, imminent retirement. Get all your comments into us over the next hour and a little bit. We're going to be telling you what's going on in the back pages of the newspapers in just a few minutes' time. That's upcoming. And then after that, Mike McCarthy, the former Leinster and Ireland second row, is going to join us to preview the weekend. A bloody interesting weekend too, which begins tonight in the Heineken Champions Cup. And also he's going to reveal his second row depth chart, which will be obviously in relation to the Irish locks ahead of the World Cup and the Six Nations and all of that good stuff. So that will be revealed just after 8 o'clock. Owen's been in conversation with Garry Ringrose. That's coming your way about 8:30. Gary Breen is going to join us on the line to look ahead primarily to United Spurs on Sunday, game that's live and off the ball, and there'll be a few other bits and pieces that we'll pick Gary's brain about as well. But again, get your comments in for Gary. That's at about 8:45, and then we're going to do some crystal ball gazing. We are going to gaze at our ball in the company of Owen and Ger, and Nathan is going to be here as well. And here's a little bit of a flavour of that one.
They should be like 7 or 8 to 1 at this point of the season. Like, they've got to come through the hardest qualifying thing in any sport in the world, and then they have to play an all-round semi-final and final.
Without exaggeration, Ger.
Give me the name of a harder thing to come out of.
European qualifiers to the World Cup?
Champions Cup pool stages.
Like, if your team...
Okay, of that quality.
Yeah, come on.
No, that's fair enough.
Come on. Name one.
Like you're like
in this conversation.
I don't know, the AFC South or
AFC. Is there?
There's tough divisions. The West in the NBA is incredibly hard to get out of.
The Championship.
Yeah, actually, no, 18
the world.
16 get you.
We'll have to get promotion from the Championship.
Yeah, is the Munster Championship the most difficult competition on the planet? Is the burning question as we gaze into our crystal ball ahead of the 2019, as all four of us give our predictions for various tournaments upcoming.
I'm sure that one got to you particularly because you wouldn't be a fan of the old exaggeration.
I did guffaw at it initially before we had a little bit of a conversation.
You do take things very literally.
I do?
Yeah.
Right.
As in like the guffaw at that, the guffaw at the best hour of television ever. Which
I mean, but the words that fell out of your mouth were, it was literally the best hour of television ever.
I didn't use the word.
You didn't use the word literally. I'll grant you that. You said it was the best hour of television ever.
Once you see a piece, the word literally automatically pops into your head, which is fine. It's a good way of thinking.
I am Jamie Redknapp.
It is a good way of thinking. You're never going to get carried away with anything, which I admire, Adrian.
I've been away, but Owen is still a dick, it turns out. So time for the papers. Right, so we're going to kick off with the Irish Examiner. I've been away for a while, it's fine, these things are going to happen. We're going to start with the Irish Examiner, and it's the front page of the Irish Examiner this morning here, who are leading with the fact that Conor Murray has been out in front of the media over the last few days. Munster star Murray slams claims that he fails drugs test is the lead on the very front page of the full Irish Examiner section this morning that we wanted to draw your attention to. Scrum half was out injured for nearly 5 months. Toughest part was the rumours that his family would hear, writes Stephen Rogers here, that I think we'd all heard them at the time, that he was out because he'd failed some sort of a drugs test, and obviously as it materialised it was nothing to do with that, more to do with the neck injury. There are other headlines in the front page of the Irish Examiner this morning that we're not going to necessarily get stuck into. On the sports section, it's the photograph that I think most rugby followers around the country didn't expect to see this morning. It's Chris Farrell. His miracle return boosts Munster's hopes at Kingsholm. Lucky 13, it writes, because it seemed as if he was expecting some sort of prolonged spell on the sidelines, but he does start for Munster against Gloucester this evening, so much more on that inside, including the thoughts of Ronan O'Gara, who says that he's not getting overly carried away with the sort of Munster might actually win the Champions Cup stuff.
No, and he's probably right to think that. I think a lot will be learned in the next fortnight, really. Without getting carried away here, when it comes to like rugby weekends in the season, this weekend really is up there in terms of the best ones. Like there's a lot of great Six Nations weekends when it really matters. Some of them failed to deliver, but this is I think it was Neil Francis this week described it as moving weekend in the Champions Cup, and it really is. This is where you kind of finally solidify whether or not you're going to qualify, and it's going to be just a cracking weekend of rugby starting from this evening, and then 4 hours of Irish provinces in action then tomorrow with Ulster and Leinster, and of course you can't forget Connacht as well. Just a brilliant weekend of rugby. Chris Farrell coming back so quickly is something which I think raised a lot of eyebrows here. I'm sure he's fully fit. There's always just a bit of a concern with somebody who's come back from such a previously long injury layoff, but if he is touch and go with such a pivotal match, especially away from home tonight, I can't really blame Munster for risking him. Now, I'm not saying it is a risk. Maybe he is fully fit and good to go and everything's overblown.
You suspect he probably is, right?
Yeah.
Like that's the... particularly in the eve of some pretty big international tournaments upcoming as well. So, we'll kind of see on that one. It's... just interesting to see some good stuff from Ronan O'Gara there about Toulouse as well. That game is this evening, which I am uber excited about. Like Friday night Champions Cup. Actually, I was just thinking about the one rival, and I'd mentioned it in that clip there, for the competitiveness of the Munster Championship. The Champions Cup pool stages.
Yeah, they're extremely tough.
Unbelievably tough.
Yeah, no, they are. And like if Munster lose tonight, for example, which is a possibility in Kingsholm of all places, you're looking at them and you're thinking, even if they lose narrowly, you couldn't really write that pool stage off as a complete disaster. But there's a high possibility that they won't qualify because they're in such a tough pool. Everybody in Munster's pool can still qualify, and when everybody can still qualify, that tends to be one of the pools where none of the best runners-up are going to come out of. So it's huge stakes tonight from a Munster perspective if they lose. And I'd agree with you for once that the pool stages of the Champions Cup are extremely tough to get out of. I was going to say it's tougher than the Munster Hurling Championship. They're close.
They're close, yeah. 2019 really has already brought some amazing things.
It has, you know. The age of the disagreement is over.
We still haven't found out what it is that you're so happy about, but we might get to that.
I was just saying I was happy, to be quite honest.
You were just having a taxi conversation.
I had to answer your question.
Munster can ride the storm if they keep their cool, writes Jerry Thornley on the sports section in the Irish Times this morning. This is obviously a preview of this game. Province ruffled in cast, but seem to have learned lesson to good effect. And a pretty good photograph there, Joey Carberry as well, hanging on to the shirt tails of Jason Woodward. So that is largely, obviously, rugby dominated the Irish Times this morning. The Times Ireland edition, meanwhile, is our next port of call here. Byrne steps in for Sexton. Ross Byrne is going to get the number 10 shirt, it seems, for Leinster at the RDS tomorrow. And I mean, you know, it'll be interesting to see what impact it has on the Leinster game plan, apart from anything else. Like Johnny Sexton obviously just recently voted the best player on the planet. I think no matter what, and Stuart Lancaster was very effusive in his praise for Ross Byrne during the week about the qualities that he brings to it, but you think that no matter what, no matter who's stepping into that shirt, that you must have to alter your game plan, no matter who's coming in, because, you know, there's going to be a difference in quality. So
of course there is, and like no two players are the same stylistically either. And when it comes to the position of out half, of course you're going to have to alter your game. Like, I may or may not be predicting Leinster for the Champions Cup later on in our crystal ball section, and I did suspect after they'd gone to Toulouse and got beaten the last time that it's like, oh God, I fear for Toulouse when they come to Dublin in 2019. Now I'm not so sure.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say I'm worried for Leinster this weekend in terms of losing the game. In terms of potentially going out and getting that bonus point, I don't think it's a done thing whatsoever, and I'm sure most Leinster fans would agree with that. You just look at the injuries, like the Irish Times have it this morning, that Rob Kearney's going to be out. Obviously Henshaw and Sexton are out as well. James Lowe suspended. 4 big players out. Toner's possible doubt as well.
Back in for them. It's
in fact, like with the probable team that the Irish Times have, that Toner's not actually starting in that team. I think it's Scott Farrell starting in the second row, according to the Irish Times, alongside James Ryan. So a little bit of a chipping away at that Leinster depth, which made them such convincing champions last year. But I think we've seen chinks in that armour already this year when it comes to depth, and it's to do with it's to do with Carberry going to Munster, it's to do with Ian Asewa leaving, and a couple of other factors as well.
Yeah.
That the aura of Leinster isn't as strong as it was last year.
And beating Leinster, turns out, was a real springboard for Toulouse as well. They've not lost one single game since that. I think won 11 of the 12 and drawn the other one. So they're a different prospect, and I'm not saying that Leinster were complacent over there, but
it's good to have Toulouse back as well.
Yeah. Murray centre stage after revealing hurt at rumours is the back page of the Irish Independent this morning. That's written on a lot of the. I'm laughing not at the headline, but at the fact that I was told that I'm not to discuss rugby any longer. And then there it is. Tommy, what can I do? It's on the back page of the Irish Independent today. And also a photograph of Marcus Rashford and Ole Gunnar Solskjaer ahead of United Tottenham on Sunday. A game that we're going to talk to Garry Breen about in just a little bit.
Back page of the Herald this morning says Rice close to making call. Decision soon from West Ham team on Irish future, and Solskjaer saying that they're going to go on the attack against Tottenham on Sunday. Back page of the Irish Daily Mail is an exclusive. A dare threat by Philip Quinn. Wentworth emerges as rival to McManus's Manor for Ryder Cup. So I think we were all under the impression that Adair Manor was almost a sure thing to host the Ryder Cup in 2026, but Wentworth has now emerged as a real contender to take the mantle as host course for the 2026 Ryder Cup. It hosted the Ryder Cup in 1926, so the whole play here is the 100th anniversary of the Wentworth Ryder Cup, and it might put them into a good position. The other story here in the back of the Irish Daily Mail, and it's carried in a lot of the other newspapers, is Kearns out of league after heart surgery. So Monaghan midfielder Niall Kearns will not feature in this year's Allianz Football League after it was revealed yesterday that he is recuperating from a heart operation. He obviously had a sensational year last year, brilliant in midfield for Monaghan. So he underwent cardiac surgery back in October, but the operation was kept under wraps. And Malachy O'Rourke has said Niall's had a heart operation, so he won't be seen until at least the end of the campaign. He's got a fair recovery period ahead of him. He had a problem with his heart last year, so we wish Niall Kearns all the best, and obviously a huge loss to Monaghan this year in the league. Hopefully we'll see him back and playing for the summer. Back page of the Sun is watch Poch. Ole says it's only right he's in the frame to boss Manchester United. The back page of the Mirror then leads with this Marko Arnautovic story. Arnie says, I won't be back. West Ham star's agent and brother says Marko wants out of Hammers. Echoes of Dimitri Payet there for West Ham United fans, I'd imagine, this morning. Back page of the Irish Daily Star is D-Day. Rice ready to make call on international future. And then a couple of the UK...
That was a story that ran in one of the newspapers yesterday, that wasn't it? That he had given some quotes to say that everything was locked down now on the club front. And, it's all sorted now, so I'm ready to make my decision.
Yeah, exactly.
I think we're all ready for him to make the decision too, aren't we? In a way that maybe we weren't as prepared for a few months ago, that, like, ultimately if he decides to go for England, screw it. It just, at least it's over.
Yeah, I would rather wait a year and him play for Ireland, though. Back page of The Guardian is the fairly dejected-looking Andy Murray. Down under, Andy Murray cuts a frustrated figure, and also study reveals dire situation. In-play betting causing havoc with younger football fans, writes David Conn. The front page of the Daily Telegraph sports section is Murray agony. Djokovic practice match flags up new concerns over Britain's fitness on eve of Australian Open. And the Racing Post then, front page here, 5-year bans for jockeys who failed tests for cocaine, says the front of the newspaper this morning. Irish authorities say message is not getting through. So they're going to face at least a 5-year ban from the sport, those Irish-based jockeys facing positive tests for cocaine. There was an announcement yesterday that Damien Melia, a £7 claiming apprentice, and Conor Murray, a £7 claiming amateur, have been given 4 and 5-year suspensions by the IHRB after testing positive for metabolites of cocaine. The Racing Post understands a third rider has also tested positive for cocaine, but that case is yet to be heard.
There was a story also in the, might have been the Guardian actually there, if you have it, or do I have it? No, I have it here, sorry. It was in the Telegraph about John Hardy, who's a former, this was a story at the time that it really passed me by, former Edinburgh back row who had actually, oddly enough, not tested positive for cocaine because there'd never been a drugs test to fail. He'd been found to have been taking cocaine in an Edinburgh bar, and there was a disciplinary hearing. There was no test. It seems like he just came out and put his hands up and said, yeah, I was doing that, and then served a ban. He's now playing at Newcastle Falcons. An interview with him by Luke Edwards in the Telegraph today.
How long was the ban? I don't put you on the spot there. I haven't actually read the piece. It just strikes me from reading this that 4 or 5 year ban for what is often referred to as recreational is fairly steep, but then you kind of think of the process of being a jockey when it comes to weight cutting and all that sort of stuff. Perhaps it could be seen as a bit more than that.
I think it was a couple of years. He played for Scotland the 2015 World Cup, so it would have been post that. And he was in a bit of limbo, couldn't get a club, and is rocked up now at the Newcastle Falcons. And is, I don't know, look, I've read the piece this morning. It's like one of these things where he's obviously taken a significant toll on him. He wants to make amends. He wants to do his parents proud. All things that you definitely have empathy for and think that are, standout things to do. But he also says stuff like that, the stories are reported on, it's tough for his family, it's been written about. He says, I know for my parents it's hard because whenever they read something in the paper, it's John Hardy ... something. It's around those lines. They don't like that, but like me, they've just got to accept it. Like, I'd almost flip that in his head and say, like, what the hell do you want people to write about you? Like, you were, put your hands up and come out. And it's not that it was nothing for, in his instance, taking cocaine was not, I'm assuming, performance enhancing. It was something that was recreational for him. But at the same time, there's an opportunity for him to come out in a slightly different way to somebody who might have taken something for performance enhancing reasons, but to do something educational for people, kids in the game, and like put himself out there and actually embrace the idea that this is something that happened to him and he got embroiled and he regrets it and he wants to make amends for it, as opposed to, please stop talking about it.
Yeah, it's true.
Which is essentially what he's saying.
The silence is never a good idea, I guess, in any subject.
Righto, we have tickets, by the way, to that Leinster-Toulouse game tomorrow to give away, and it's totally sold out, so we're just looking for you to leave a comment for us about the weekend's rugby. You can use the hashtag OTBAM so that we know you've entered, and you will be in the draw, and we'll bring you that winner before we leave you at the end of the show. A man that I know for a fact loves a good hashtag, Mike McCarthy. Good morning to you.
Morning, season's greetings, lads.
All is well in the world?
Very good, thanks very much. Thanks for having me.
No, delighted to have you on, and we're going to get your thoughts on, you're going to do the second row depth chart first. We've been going through all these positions over the last little while, and we'll continue it into the Six Nations. I do have a sneaking suspicion as to who number one of that depth chart might be, Mike, but we will get to that in just a little bit.
You might be surprised.
Really?
Yes.
Oh, I'm intrigued now.
All to be revealed soon, though.
Your bromance with Dev really is what's leading me to believe that he's in there at number one. But
he's dropped down the pecking order. Don't worry.
Right, okay. Well, stay tuned for that, viewers. Leinster-Toulouse tomorrow, Mike, 1 o'clock. A game that's going to be live and off the ball. Sexton is out. We've just been obviously picking over this over the last 24 hours. The news that he's out. Ross Byrne will come in and take over that position. He's obviously a good player, Ross Byrne, with a huge future ahead of him, but you assume that from Leo Cullen and Stuart Lancaster's point of view, losing a player of the quality of Sexton, like no matter who comes in, it changes the game plan, right?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, first of all, it's how exciting is it for the 4 times winners versus the 4 times winners, but it's replacing the World Player of the Year. Johnny Sexton is irreplaceable, but if you do want to have someone stepping in, it's Ross Byrne. He's been his understudy for 3 years. He's learned from the best, and we've seen how he steps up. We saw last season where he stepped in the semi-final of the Pro 14 against Munster. He played the 2 Montpellier games. And, what Ross Byrne brings is he's cool, calm, collective. He's brought that fiery confidence that maybe he had to grow a bit, obviously learning that from Sexto himself. But, Ross Byrne certainly can control the game. He'll put the lads in the right areas of the field. And he's got a real rugby brain. He'll make the really, really good decisions. So, while it's obviously hugely disappointing not to have Johnny Sexton, there's no better person to step in and fill his boots. The only thing you would have liked to have maybe seen is for Ross Byrne to have played last week against Ulster. I think the reason he obviously didn't play was because they had a sense Johnny Sexton was struggling with that calf injury. So Kieran Frawley got that game time to kind of wrap up Ross Byrne in bubble wrap for this game coming up. So, but no one better to step in and fill the boots.
Yeah, and Frawley as well might be required to come in for the last 10 or 15 minutes and see the game home, so maybe that worked on all fronts. Is Sexton, just finally on this one briefly, Mike, is he going to be involved, do you think, over the last week or 10 days? I mean, does he step totally away? Because he does strike me as a sort of character who's at the forefront of implementing whatever the coaching plan would be. Is he still involved, do you think?
I'm sure he'll be helping Ross Byrne in terms of getting clarity around exactly what he needs to do, and without being too pushy or sticking his nose in, he'll be there to support the team and support Ross Byrne if they should need that help. But as equally, there was a concern. I'm not sure whether he is or he isn't of Dev Toner playing as well, and for me, Dev Toner's equally a big loss. Yes, James Ryan and
Scott Fardy, sorry, brilliant people to step in. But we've seen what Dev brings when to the team. He gives that foundation of platform or set piece, which it's the concrete and gelling of the team, which allows the rest of the team to perform well. So hopefully we'll see Dev on that team sheet, because he to me he's as important to having the team as Johnny Sexton. Yeah, like potentially missing those couple of players, Carney, Henshaw, and in the light, obviously, of the recent blip. Are you concerned, particularly with the Munster result, are you concerned by that blip and the impact that might have on where Leinster are at tomorrow?
Yeah, they haven't hit top form. I mean, they've been a little bit rusty, and when you look at that Toulouse side, and I think since they beat Leinster the last time, they haven't lost in 12 games. They've won 11 and drawn 1. They've got a lot of cohesion and togetherness. That's something Leinster maybe at this stage don't have because of the chopping and changing of the teams week in, week out. So we kind of saw that a bit against Munster. Hugely disappointing for the guys, Leinster boys against Munster. But when you think they were playing most of the game with 14 men, they're maybe a little bit rusty and may lack a little bit of cohesion going into this game.
It seems like an odd time of the year to get rusty, Mike, doesn't it? Like, I think fair enough in the opening stages of the Champions Cup, that's acceptable. Why do you think they're rusty in the middle of the season when, if anything, maybe they could be tired, but I wouldn't have thought they would be rusty?
Well, I'm not sure the rusty is the right word, but I mean, I don't think they've hit top gear, which I think is possibly a good thing. I mean, losing against Munster will refocus the minds. That's the way they'll be looking at it. They'll really be looking hard at where they can be better. They won't be coming into this game in a relaxed mood. Notoriously over the last couple of seasons, Leinster have not been hitting top gear at this point in the season. So to be in the position they're in, doing as well as they are in the Pro 14, to be doing as well as they are in the Champions Cup, I can only see them moving up the gears after this, and having a great run in as they did last season.
If we look back on the France leg, Mike, like the obviously famously slow out of the blocks and allow Toulouse to build up a phenomenal lead, almost of more concern for me was the fact that Leinster got back to 27-21 and couldn't close the game out in a way that, like last season, we really would have seen them doing that quite a bit. What's your thought on the Leinster product this season versus where they were at last season? Is it a lesser product now?
Yeah, well, like you mentioned there, the last 10 minutes, Leinster were leading, and that try, the intercept, it wasn't just any old intercept. I think Stuart Lancaster's alluded to that during the week, the fact that this is a French team that has done their analysis, they've done their homework, they've seen that play before, and it just shows, most French sides maybe wouldn't go into the detail of analysis that, they would in the Premiership or in Ireland. but you really saw that they'd looked at how Leinster play and saw that was a pre-rehearsed move, and that's how they got the intercept. But for Toulouse, what Leinster are going to have to be careful with and maybe improve on slightly with where they've been currently this season is respecting the ball, looking after the ball. This Toulouse team score over half their tries from turnover ball. They're phenomenally dangerous against a disorganised defence. So that's going to be a big work on for the Leinster team, is to keep hold of the ball for longer periods of time and respect the ball, not give it up cheaply, because we know how dangerous, how quick those Toulouse backs are. Another thing that Leinster have to be really strong in is discipline. We saw against Munster, the discipline was really poor. You have bad discipline against Toulouse. They kick to the corner. They've got a humongous pack, and they just drive mauls against you. So those two areas are key areas which Leinster are going to have to do really well on come 1 o'clock on Saturday.
Yeah, for sure. And just on that first point, on terms of holding onto the ball, Mike, is your sense this season that Leinster have been more risky than they have been last year and are giving the ball away more cheaply, or at least giving the opposition the opportunities to take the ball away from them a little bit more cheaply?
Maybe two things. Maybe it's a bit of overconfidence with what they achieved last season, winning the double. That brings a lot of confidence to the mind, and maybe they're a few more percent in terms of what they're trying out there. But the other one is that cohesion thing I mentioned to you before. When you're not playing week in together, you're chopping and changing the team. It can certainly affect that side of things. So as I said, this point in the season going forward, I think there'll be more cohesion. There'll be a bit more of a settled team as the bigger games come thicker and faster, and I think you'll see that cohesion come in the run up to towards the end of the season.
And Leinster to win tomorrow, Mike?
Oh, Leinster's to win. Yeah, I mean, I think even if they don't, I think both teams will still go through. But it's that home quarter final, 1 o'clock kickoff. We know French sides notoriously don't travel particularly well. 1 o'clock kickoff, an early kickoff, so a good start out the blocks for Leinster, and I'm convinced it's going to be a good win. But interesting to see as well if Robbie Henshaw's involved, because I heard he's been training during the week. Right. But if he is to step in, we've seen he can do it as well. We saw that injury against Italy where he did his shoulder. He came back and played in the semi-final of the Pro 14 against Scarlets, and he physically dominated that game.
Okay, that's the game live, by the way, on Off the Ball for you tomorrow. As Mike says, it's underway from 1 o'clock, so we'll be on air just before that. Gloucester Munster at Kingsholm this evening. I have to say, we were just saying earlier on how exciting it is to have a game of interest on a Friday night. Incredibly, Chris Farrell is fit and he starts. Their fourth favourites for the tournament. Mike, with a couple of rounds to go on the pool stages, have you seen enough from Munster so far to believe that they can actually win this tournament?
Oh, 100%. Munster are always in with a shout, aren't they? I mean, for them going down to Gloucester, I think the main thing they'll be happy about is seeing there's no Cipriani. The drop off in performance since Cipriani's been out in terms of their attack has been pretty incredible. Gloucester, they had a heavy loss to Sale a couple of weeks ago at home. Lost to Leicester there, so. I think Munster will be going down with full confidence. They're coming into the game with a bit of momentum. Those two Interpro wins, beating Leinster at home and beating Connacht away, and their pack is looking really strong with Klein and Tadhg in the second row, and that back row is pretty phenomenal. So I think they went away and beat Exeter, so I believe they'll go away and beat Gloucester as well.
Yeah, like the pack has been seriously impressive. There has been signs as well, certainly in the game against Connacht, that back line is starting to get things going as well. Andy Dunn was saying that perhaps Munster don't exactly know what they're all about in the backs just yet, but he was certainly more impressed with them over the last week. Are you the same? Are you starting to see a Munster identity when they're attacking?
Yeah, I think they're incredibly frustrating to play against. They're hugely physical. I think one area they need to improve on is their attack. If we look back to that game where Munster beat Leinster, I think they scored 2 tries, and those tries were their first in 3 games, and both those tries came from, one was an intercept and one was from a driving maul. So, that's. Every team has work-ons. We spoke there about Leinster's work-on is their discipline and maybe respecting the ball and looking after it slightly better. For Munster, they just need to improve their attack, and if they can do that with what they bring defensively and how frustrating they are to play against, they're going to be in a very good place going forward.
Yeah, it's very fine margins, obviously, in this tournament. Do you think, and Munster can ill afford to lose, obviously, it's in. What do you think in terms of their chances of getting it done over there?
Sorry?
Are Munster going to win?
Oh yeah, I think they're going to win. I think they'll, I'm very confident they'll go down there and do a job. And great to see Chris Farrell back after after that bad knee injury he had, and it looked like he was limping off the pitch after that Conor game. So I was delighted to see that news that he's fit and available to play.
Yeah, it's incredible. Racing at Ulster is the other game at Belfast tomorrow at 3:15. That's also live on Off the Ball. One of the other reasons that we wanted to get John, Mike, obviously, as we mentioned at the top, is that we're mapping out our 31 players who are going to be on that plane to Japan alongside Joe Schmidt and his coaching staff in more than a few months' time, obviously ahead of the Rugby World Cup. We'll be updating this as we go through the Six Nations as well. 4 years ago, Joe Schmidt Depth Chart, yes, good hashtag. He picked 4 second rows, Mike, when he went in 2015. So we want to get your thoughts on who the locks are going to be. We've been picking each position here as we went. I should mark up that this is going to be fatally skewed due to your bromance with Dev. But I mean, I think you've indicated that he may not be your number one selection. Who have you got?
Yeah. Shall I reveal?
Yes, give us your reveal. Yeah.
Well, I wanted to keep you guys guessing, but shall I start from first down to fourth?
Yes, please.
Or fourth to first?
Go first to fourth.
Okay, on my depth chart, Mike McCarthy's depth chart, 2019, leading into the next World Cup. At number one, we have Devin Evan Toner. And I'm going to go into a couple of reasons why Dev Toner is number one. So my top four: Dev Toner, James Ryan, Ian Henderson, and Tyke Furlong. Okay, so why is Dev Toner number one? A lot of people are saying, they go for James Ryan as number one. Dev Toner for me, number one, is because I kind of alluded to it a little bit earlier. Just he is the concrete, the cement, the foundations in that Irish side that allows everyone to play well. He doesn't do anything really X factor or wow factor apart from maybe smashing Brodie Retallick that New Zealand game, but he just brings he's the glue behind that team. We saw against Argentina in the autumn internationals when Henderson was calling the lineouts, and Hendy can do a really good job at calling the lineouts, and great string to his bow alongside what he brings physically in his attack and his defence. But for me, Dev Toner securing that line-out ball in attack, frustrating the opposition in defence. We saw against New Zealand, he was straight back in, marking up the back of the tail of the line-out. We know New Zealand score most of their tries off first phase off a line-out. So Dev disrupted a lot of that at the tail of the line-out. What he brings in terms of his aerial skills at kickoff, winning kickoffs back, receiving kickoffs, his work rate. I really do believe, and I think Joe Schmidt's tinkered with it a couple of times, having different lock combinations, but you always come out the game thinking, geez, it really shows what's missing when Dev isn't playing.
Maybe he's come through this, but I'm not a bit concerned by the form of Devin Toner over the last while.
Oh no, I think he's been playing. I think he's been playing well, and sometimes he goes about his business without you really noticing him. But he needs to be in that team, and for me, he's first on the list. Number two, James Ryan. We've seen what he brings in terms of his work rate, his collisions in defence and attack, and carrying the ball, getting over the gain line, getting over those when he's running into heavy traffic, getting over those 2 inches, and he's huge for the team and what he brings physically and giving the team that momentum. Ian Henderson, I know he's injured at the moment, but we know what Hendy brings when he's fit, and Tyke Furlong, Tyke Byrne, has been a revelation. So he's carried that form from Scarlets across to Munster, brings a real poach straight at the breakdown. Huge engine on him, huge work rate, and he's a great guy to have in a squad as well. Like Ian Henderson and Tyke Byrne, they both can cover back row as well, obviously. So when you go into a World Cup, and they're very valuable players. Kind of off the radar a bit, but guys who could possibly make it: Alton Delan and Jean Klein. for me, two great players, and Gav Thornbury also. I mean, the stocks are, since 2015 when we didn't have 2, 3, 4 absolute quality world-class players in each position. I think we now have that, and it's very exciting leading into the World Cup.
So I do have a question about Devin Toner, but just to kind of put that into some sense. So you've got your 4 in the depth chart. How many beyond that do we reckon are going to get on the plane? I know it's up to Joe and all that. Obviously, Henderson and Burns' cases are greatly enhanced by the fact that they're versatile and can play the back row, as you've already mentioned. Is there a fifth?
He brought 4 in 2015. So I mean,
because of their versatility in the back row, could there be somebody who's not on your depth chart, Mike, who could make the plane?
He brought 4 in 2015, and I know that because I wasn't on the plane. But then I got called up. Got his nasty hamstring injury. I was out there for a week, and we lost to Argentina. So a week's holiday for me. But I'm assuming they'll take 4, and then that someone will get called up if there's an injury.
How does that work when you're sitting around? On Owen's question there, in terms of. That you're. Is he in contact with you to say, listen, you're the next man in if anything goes wrong here, or how does that work?
Well, that wasn't the case with me, but to be honest, I hadn't been in the training camps before they went, so I thought I was completely off the radar. But my form was good for Leinster, so it just shows that Joe does not miss a trick. He was obviously keeping tabs on the guys, guys even who maybe weren't. The next in line, because I think Dan Toohey had been in all the training camps, so my assumption was an injury. Dan Toohey would get called up, so it was a surprise when I did get called up.
So were you off, sort of enjoying yourself?
No, what was I doing? It was I'm not sure actually, to be honest, what I was doing, but I certainly wasn't expecting a call up, so it was a bit of a shock, to be honest.
I just have, sorry Mike, I just have one last question on Devin Toner and the difference between him.
Last one on Devin Toner, okay?
He doesn't want to be picked at too much here.
No, it's actually kind of backing up your point, because I do wonder if Devin Toner is one of the more underrated players in the squad, which seems such a ridiculous thing. How could you underrate the tallest man in the world and not appreciate what he does every single time? But maybe it's more accurate to say, has he been underrated? Because I really feel that there was a public shift in terms of favour of Devin Toner being our second row post the Argentina game, post the New Zealand game. You mentioned the massive headline-grabbing moment against Brodie Retallick, but everything else he did in those 2 tests were outstanding as well. That now it is a realistic debate as to who is our best lock, and Devin Toner seems to be edging his way in front in that discussion. Do you feel that before that he was a tad underrated?
Yeah, I think maybe, possibly he has been, because like I said, Dev doesn't really bring that absolute wow factor that the likes of, Ian Henderson, James Ryan, Tyg Byrne, they are absolute power athletes, phenomenal specimens, physically. And I think Dev would be the first to say he's not a power athlete. So when you're looking at those players, it's probably very tempting to say, oh, I'd love to have them in my starting team in terms of what they bring in terms of their carrying, getting over the gain line. And you try it out, you tinker with it, you give those guys a run, and for some reason it just doesn't quite gel. I think Dev complement. We've got players now who can carry the ball, get over the game for us. We've got phenomenal back rowers, we've got phenomenal second rowers. Those 3 I just mentioned in terms of their power game they bring. But I'm not sure the exact science behind it, but you just seem to need Dev there to gel those guys together. And sometimes the likes of Ian Henderson and Tyg Byrne, because they're so powerful, so explosive, so bring so much energy and dynamism, they are actually sometimes better off the bench. It's like, same with Sean Cronin. He's such a power athlete. What he brings coming off the bench when guys are tired, when they're fatigued in the last 20 minutes is pretty incredible.
Yeah, you're talking me around, I have to say. We're just showing a selection of the people that have been in touch, slide of people that have been in touch with us over the last while, given their picks. To be fair, the vast majority of them are going for James Ryan, number 1. Anecdotally after that, it's any combination of Toner and Henderson, and then Tyg Byrne bringing up the rear. Like, it does seem like a shootout between Toner and Henderson, at least if you're Joe Schmidt for that second berth. in the same way that we've just been speaking about people writing off Devin Toner, is it the same case with Tadhg Beirne? Mike, do you think that like a guy who is so influential as a line-out leader, he's good in the ball, he's aggressive at the breakdown, unbelievable turnover stats, maybe some of those are more back row features, but are we writing him off too early in a way that actually, you know, he does well for Munster over the latter stages of the Champions Cup, maybe squeezes his way in the Six Nations, and suddenly we could be looking at a Ryan Beirne combination?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, he's got a great opportunity with Henderson being out to be involved in that match squad for that first game against England. But we've spoken about what Tadhg Beirne brings. He's a phenomenal athlete, and he's got the complete game. I think maybe, I'm not sure what it is, but possibly the only thing I could think of that is maybe lacking in his game, which is, I'm really not sure if it's the case, but it's just his size for international rugby at second row. Like myself, I wasn't the tallest. Tadhg wouldn't be the tallest. He's about 6. I don't think he's 6'5". I think he's 6'4", and he wouldn't be the heaviest. So in terms of giving that foundation and security of having that weight and strength in the scrum to give you that platform, I'm not sure if that is an issue. I don't think it is, but in terms of size, would be slightly smaller than other second rows and be more in the figure of a back row.
Just on that basis, as we wrap up on it, so size is the thing that's against Beirne. The lack of aggression, I'm sort of probably misparaphrasing the expression that you used about Dev Toner a little bit earlier on. Is there any, or what are the weaknesses of James Ryan?
Yeah, I don't think he has any, does he? I mean, you could perhaps say experience because he hasn't been on the scene very long, but then what he's doing, he just shows he's only going to get better with time. So James Ryan is a complete player. To be honest, I don't know how he can sustain his performance levels week in, week out that he is doing. James Ryan is up there with the best test locks in the world at the moment.
I must say, you saying he wouldn't be the tallest, he's 6'5", is the most heartbreaking thing I've ever heard, Mike.
Yeah, well, unfortunately these days I think I got out at the right time. I'm 6'5", and I felt like I felt pretty small when I got the chance at international rugby. You look at them all now: Etzebeth, the Greys, the second rows at test level nowadays. They're not really much smaller than 6'7" at a minimum.
Yeah. All right, Mike, we're going to leave it there for the minute. Thanks a million for joining us.
Cheers, guys. Thanks very much.
Take it easy. Mike McCarthy there, live on the line from Shea McCarthy, I'm assuming, and some interesting stuff. His bromance with Dev Toner totally, obviously, coloured the conversation there, but...
Not necessarily.
I mean, I have to say, I was definitely buying a bit of it towards the end.
If he did that depth chart pre-November, I think it would have raised a few more eyebrows. Obviously, my point about the tide turning towards Dev Toner being the number one choice isn't true when we look at those Instagram responses that we put on screen. Everybody literally on that screen had James Ryan as their number one, and he probably still is, but I think Devin Toner's position as a starter perhaps was in doubt 3 months ago. I think after his performances in November, if we're going into the England game without Devin Toner in our starting team, and by extension James Ryan there, I think that our lock position is as locked in. It's more locked in than our front row, really.
You just have to flip that to James Ryan 10, and then it's for me. Then it's pretty accurate after that.
Yeah, but they're Mike McCarthy's picks, so.
My lock picks are not a thing, it turns out.
Well, he has dashed our dreams of becoming international standard locks. I think we're just a little bit too short.
Right, it is coming up on 20 to 9 on this Friday morning. Delighted to have you along with us. We've tickets, by the way, for Leinster to lose tomorrow to give away, so get your best rugby comments in, and we'll give those away before the end of the show. Darren Cleary is going to be in the studio next to bring us up to speed with all the live sport. But before all of that, Leinster and Ireland Rugby International Garry Ringrose, who's an ambassador of PwC Ireland, and Owen popped down to the PwC offices during the week after it was announced that Ringrose was renewing his partnership with the firm for 2019. Take a look.
Okay, so we are back at the PwC headquarters with PwC ambassador Garry Ringrose. How are you?
Good, thanks. How are you?
Not too bad. So we're at the start of 2019. Over the past couple of weeks, have you had time to reflect on 2018 at all and all the success you had?
Being honest, no, you'd probably not. You don't really. There's always a game around the corner that you need to be focusing on, so you don't really sit back and reflect on the year too much, to be honest.
Of course, though, you had a pretty busy schedule over Christmas and a fairly interesting game down in Thomond Park to keep the mind occupied.
Yeah, exactly. So you couldn't really get distracted too much or afford to get comfortable and start reflecting on the year that's been with that game coming up. So it was, we're still flat out training wise, preparing for that game and the other games as well.
What was that Munster game like to play in?
It was tough. I think I've never played an easy game down in Thomond Park, and the atmosphere is always incredible down there, and you can feel the ground shaking certainly when Munster run out. So they are pretty cool days to be a part of, or nights to be a part of. I know my granddad has ties down to Limerick, so he always talks about him playing as a kid around where Thomond Park was. So it is always cool to go down and play there. The game itself obviously was tough enough and didn't go the way we had liked, but I think learned a couple of valuable lessons from it and hopefully try and be better as a result.
Yeah, there was a lot of needle in the game, which we all loved. Was it enjoyable for you?
Yeah, it was. I think both teams would probably think, looking back, see where it could have been better, but there was definitely an edge there, and Christmas was well and truly out of the system from the first minute, really. And it was flat out. I think it just shows how much both teams wanted to win, which contributed to a tough but great game.
I'm not surprised that you haven't had time or have deliberately not reflected on 2018 just yet, because every time we speak to you, you're always looking forward. And 2019 is obviously a huge year for you personally, a huge year for Irish rugby. When it comes to your psychology looking at a year like this, are you somebody who's looking at the singular focus of the amazing moments that are possible from an Irish perspective and from a Leinster perspective, or are you more a process-driven individual?
I think I'd be guilty of being more process-driven. I think there's so much. So I was talking about it earlier, I feel like repeating myself, but there's so much out of a player's control, whether it's injury, form, other guys coming into form, selection. So to really get distracted by anything outside of your control, it's just about focusing on what's in front of you in the next challenge and taking full advantage of the next opportunity, whether it's in training and then if you're lucky enough in a game. So you can't really get distracted. I know it's a big year for Ireland, which a lot of people are talking about, and then obviously another big year for the province, but you don't really get too caught up in maybe what's been said externally. You kind of focus on what works for you and works for the group by keeping it in-house and focusing on each or the next challenge.
Has that always been the case with you, or did you have to learn to become a process-oriented person?
I don't know. I think from a personal perspective, coming up through under 20s and stuff like that, I wouldn't have always been plain sailing and picked for some games and dropped for others, and you kind of, I think, appreciate that worrying about stuff that's out of your control usually, well, it doesn't bear much weight, or it shouldn't bear much weight in your thought process. So it's more important just focusing on preparing and working hard and then taking advantage of any opportunity that I'm given. So I think most players, to be fair, would have that attitude, and it's, I think, just with the nature of the game and how competitive it is with Leinster and competitive it is with Ireland, you can't really afford to do anything other than that, that sort of way.
To lose this weekend for Leinster, have you found this year tougher from a Leinster perspective as a collective?
I don't know whether you call it tougher. I think it's just never easy. Every time in Europe, I've never played an easy European game. The preparation that goes in, the opposition that you're playing against, it's always incredibly tough, and it's no different with Toulouse. Obviously getting beaten by them over there, just shows that if you are off the ball, that you can, they can pick you apart and ultimately beat you. So it's our job to try and reverse that previous result.
I'm sure from your own personal perspective, maybe you haven't reflected on this either, but certainly things have been written about you. It's been an excellent season from you personally, performance-wise, but also you get the sense watching, I'm not privy to the conversations that are happening, that you've been kind of pushed more into a leadership circle within the Leinster camp. I guess with Isa leaving the team last year, everybody had to step up a little bit when it came to leadership. Is that a conversation you've been having with Leinster coaches, that perhaps one day you're looking at a potential captaincy role or something like that?
No, not at all. I wouldn't be looking at it like that. I think with Isa gone, you definitely lose a voice, but Johnny's been brilliant in stepping up as club captain, and he's there with Rhys Ruddock and Luke McGrath and even Rob Carney just there. Gone against Ulster, there's still some unbelievable leaders in the group that I'd still pay attention to and listen to every word. And I mean, they've experienced incredibly valuable experiences that pick in their brains and listening to what they think and how they assess situations and games and circumstances that you can learn from. I think for me personally, I think Stuart and Leo and Phil would always encourage, it doesn't matter whether you have 100 caps or 1 cap, encouraged to speak up and have a point of view. So I don't know, I don't think it'd be personally trying to step up more. I think he'd encourage every player to be a better leader. So that's one of the focuses they'd have for everyone, really.
Do you feel that you've got more confidence in some of the individuality you can bring to the Leinster team? There's a lot written about you stepping into the 10 channel for one of the tries against Wasps in the RDS a few months back. Is that something, for example, you might have been able to do last year, having the balls to say, Johnny, step out of the way for a moment, this is my ball?
No, I think you wouldn't really think about it like that. It's just about doing what you can that's best for the team. And you mean someone like Johnny, because of how good a player he is, he's constantly targeted. So I mean, Stuart would encourage not just me, any player to step up and be able to ball play. So you wouldn't overthink it, or it would never be a matter of telling the 10 who's there to step out of the way. It's not really like that. It's just you play what's in front of you, and if there's an opportunity to attack, you take it. So you wouldn't overanalyze it or think too much of it all, really. I think it only happened once or twice, so it's not that really big of a deal.
The last thing I wanted to ask you about was 12 months ago we were sitting here and you were chatting about your college course. You're graduated now, are you?
No,
you're still there.
I'm still going. Not much has changed. I've just completed a few more modules since the last time I was talking to you here, so UCD are incredibly helpful at supporting me, especially over the year that's been and how hectic and manic it's been. It's great the fact that I'm there, and I feel lucky to be working with UCD and how helpful they are. So they kind of would facilitate, and you still have to sit the exams, so there's no getting out of that. You still have to put in the hours of study and stuff, but if it's assignments, you might get an extension, or if you have to sit an exam in a different place, they'll supply an invigilator that'll bring the paper to you, and you can sit the exam in a team hotel or something like that. So I don't think I'm progressing and nearly there. There's another semester or 2 to go, but I certainly wouldn't have got this far if it wasn't for UCD's help.
And I guess as well, it helps to have that sort of routine outside of the training pitch as well, that sort of routine day to day. It hasn't changed too much from last year, which was a pretty good year for you.
Yeah, well, it's easy to say now, it's nice to have the distraction, but then when you're going into an exam, you're thinking, oh, why am I doing this? But no, in the grand scheme of things, it's always good to have something like that going.
It certainly is. Well, best of luck this weekend and best of luck with the next few months. Garry Ringrose, thanks a million.
Thank you.
That's PwC Ambassador Garry Ringrose in conversation with Eoin Sheahan during the week there. You can check out that full piece up on our YouTube channel as well. Plenty of comments in on the rugby. Darren Cleary has joined us in the studio. Morning to you, Darren.
Good morning, Adrian.
We've picked out some from YouTube here. Not all of them can be read out on air. Adrian McPartland says Tadhg will be ahead of Henderson once the World Cup comes along. Hashtag OTBAM. We might get to some more of those before we leave you at the end of the show. But Darren, you're kicking us off with the news that we discussed a little bit earlier about Andy Murray and potentially the end of his career.
Yeah, he was heartbroken last night when he addressed the media. He had to stop, go out, compose himself, and then come back and start the press conference. But Andy Murray has announced he will be forced to retire at some stage this year. A debilitating hip injury has left the former world number one in constant agony, and the Scot says he has no choice but to finish up. The 31-year-old will try and play through the pain at the Australian Open, but a tearful Murray has admitted his days are numbered.
Yeah, I think there's a chance of that. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, like I said, I'm not sure. I'm not sure I'm able to play through the pain, for another 4 or 5 months. I have an option to have another operation, which will allow me to have a better quality of life and be out of pain. There's little things like, day to day that are also a struggle, and it'd be nice to be able to do them without any pain, putting shoes on, socks on, things like that.
God, when it's that bad, you assume that it almost becomes a pretty straightforward decision that, like, if he's struggling to put his shoes on, he's got his kid, hasn't he?
Yeah.
Right?
I'm not sure.
I mean, anyway, that sort of stuff that you're suddenly you realise that actually this just isn't worth it anymore.
Yeah, I mean, that kind of chronic pain, you'd wonder, is it even worth one last crack? I mean, he spent 2 years trying to even get back to a position where he's playing any kind of tennis at any level, and it's just, it was heartbreaking to watch him, because he was a broken man. He was broken physically by it, and you could tell that mentally, while he had kind of made his decision, he hadn't come to terms with it, because he was still some way thinking he could get to Wimbledon. Well, he admitted even after saying, Wimbledon is where I'd like to get, as far as I'm not getting to Wimbledon, lads.
The operation that he's talking about there is not one to get him back in the court, by the sounds of things. That's one just to give him a decent quality of life when he jacks in tennis.
Yeah, he made the point that some players have come back, I think he called it a hip shaving, I think, where they shave part of it down. He did say some players have got back, but it is not designed to rehab you from a sports point of view. It's designed to get you out of chronic pain.
Presumably he'll have a replacement at some stage. Like, it's only a matter of when. You just don't want to get it too early in your life, obviously. He's still 31 years of age. He's still a very, very young man to be going through something like this.
You have to replace it every 10 to 12 years, I think, something like that. I've heard Dennis Leamy speak about it before,
The longer you can keep it going, the better. But, like, again, just coming back to this idea that the horror stories these tennis players have of pain, like, the most famous one, and it's cliche at this point, is just the Agassi chapters of the pain. He, like, couldn't sleep in a bed, for example, had to lie on a hard floor to
back pain.
Exactly. It's such a tough kind of career path. Although a lot of people out there this morning be like, he's got plenty of money to get it fixed.
Yeah.
Missing the point spectacularly. Ole Gunnar Solskjaer is not surprised that the Tottenham manager Mauricio Pochettino is among those being considered for the Manchester United job. The Argentinian is the favourite to be appointed the full-time successor to Jose Mourinho in the summer. Solskjaer is in caretaker charge until the end of the season. He's done his chances no harm by winning all games so far. The Norwegian has been asked about Pochettino's credentials.
He's done a very good job. I think he's one of the, as you say, that speculation is there for a reason, because he's done well. Then again, it's not my job to rate all different managers. It's my focus is on me and my team.
Now, the Celtic manager Brendan Rodgers has warned Lee Griffiths that his time away from football should not be treated as a holiday. The striker was pictured at Newcastle races last weekend, prompting a response on Twitter. Griffiths said it was laughable to suggest he'd be on leave because of gambling or drug problems. He hasn't featured since the 5-1 Premiership win over Kilmarnock in early December. The Scottish international has been given time off by his club while he deals with what they have described as ongoing issues. He has since received a public warning from his manager. Rodgers says his time away from football should not be used as a holiday. Lee was off on health grounds. He's quoted as saying, "It is not a holiday. It's very important that he understands why he is off and why he's been given the time off, why he has to maximise that time in terms of getting better. That's about getting specialist help and lying low and focusing on the simple things in your life that will allow you to be better." The big game tonight in the Championship is Leeds against Derby County. Frank Lampard was forced to postpone a training session ahead of the clash after police detained a suspicious man lurking around the training ground. That's a file photo of a suspicious man and not the suspicious man in question. Police say the man was in possession of a pair of binoculars, pliers and a change of clothes. There are some beliefs that he was intending to pass information on to Leeds, and efforts are being made by police to establish if he was working on or on behalf of the Championship leaders.
I think when he was asked for his name, he said his name is Barcelo Mielsa, and he managed to get away with that. He should have gone up a tree.
Yeah, Kerry boys love a good girl.
Yeah.
Who was it, the Donegal lads, was it? Who was at the tree that time?
I like to think it was Jim McGuinness himself.
Jim McGuinness with a wig and fake glasses and the nose and the moustache and everything.
They cut down that tree afterwards.
Such
was the impact, yes. Yeah.
Right.
It's gone now.
What sort of tree was it? Tree down?
Yeah.
Was it like a little flimsy tree or was it a big oak?
There's no flimsy trees in Killarney, Adrian. That's the most disrespectful thing you've ever said
Jesus
to me.
Christ, I mean, your levels of pro-Carliness. There are no flimsy trees. If nothing else comes out of today, there are no flimsy trees in Killarney.
It was tough oak and a tough man to go up those trees, I tell you.
The Arsenal manager Unai Emery says they will not be buying any players this month. The Gunners are looking to sign a centre-back and a winger. They are preparing for the FA Cup fourth round tie at home to Manchester United on Europa League last 32 game against Bate Borisov next month. But after spending upwards of 75 million in the summer window, Emery conceded that the cash will not be splashed this month. Meanwhile, in rugby, Ross Byrne will start at out half for Leinster's ChampionsCup clash with Toulouse this weekend. A calf strain suffered in the loss to Munster means Johnny Sexton will not be risked. The veteran out half is still struggling with that injury. Leinster senior coach Stuart Lancaster is confident Ross Byrne can deputise.
100%. I mean, he played in Europe last year. You know, it wasn't like he didn't play in any of the European games. played the European games. He started against Munster in the Pro 14 semi-final. You know, Johnny didn't play at all that game. He's benefited from being sat underneath Johnny now for 2 or 3 years. So he's a leader, he runs the show, his kicking game is excellent, he's ready, 100%.
That's Stuart Lancaster, the Leinster senior coach there. The last of his leaders' questions with Stuart Lancaster, by the way, you can check that out on News Talk. Tomorrow morning from 9 o'clock, he's going to be in conversation himself and Ger with Bill Beswick, who's a performance coach who's worked with a lot of really interesting characters, including Alex Ferguson and Roy Keane. So it's the last in a series of 6, and it's on your radio from 9 o'clock tomorrow, and you can also check out the full pieces on the Off the Ball social channels.
Meanwhile, Conor Murray says unfounded rumours that he had failed a drugs test took a toll on his family. A neck injury sidelined the scrum half for 5 months in a bid to protect his medical information. Details of his progress and return date were kept under wraps by the province and Murray. In the absence of information, rumour and lies spread around. Murray says he was hurt by what he called crazy rumours that he was out of action due to a drugs ban, and said they had an effect on his family.
All right, that's it, Darren.
That's me.
Thanks a million. Cheers for that. It is 5 to 9 on this Friday morning. We're going to have our panel coming your way. It's myself, Owen, Ger and Nathan are going to join us in the studio. We may have recorded it a little bit earlier in the week to look ahead to 2019, to gaze into our crystal ball. And also on the way is going to be Garry Breen to look ahead primarily to United Spurs, which is a game that will be live on Off the Ball this Sunday. But before all of that, Kevin Kilbane was the special star guest on the Keith Andrews show yesterday. There was loads of interesting stuff, all of which you can check out over on offtheball.com. But here is Kev on the pressure that came with playing football in Sunderland.
I went there. I didn't enjoy it. Didn't enjoy. It wasn't so much I didn't enjoy. People thought you don't enjoy the area, the people. It was nothing like that. It was just the scrutiny you were always under. I mean, I'd signed, and I remember I had a supporter. I was with my wife at the time. We went out for a meal. It was around about Christmas time when I signed, because there was no deadline at the time. It was actually the last window before the deadline came in. So, a transfer window come in, should I say. So I signed around Christmas time, and I had a Sunderland fan that just came in and sat beside us. Like, I felt like he was just entitled to sit with us and have a meal with us. It was round about Christmas. I think it was between Christmas and New Year. Just sat with us.
You mean at your table?
At our table, 20 minutes, asking me questions, and we were looking at you like, I didn't want. You don't want to say, look, excuse me, mate, but
that's why you're too nice.
Yeah, but it's right. But it was like there was just. I felt as though it was you were owned.
I was going to say there's a sense of entitlement.
You were owned.
You belong to us.
You were owned wherever you went.
Across in the documentary.
Wherever you went across the northeast, and I mean it honestly. And I've had it at various football clubs you've been at. You know, you played for a big club in Everton. Played at Derby, another big club, say Champions level. West Brom, another big club. But there, it was like going around the supermarket. People actually, you should be putting that. You should be putting that in your trolley. So I was like, mate, and I spoke, and it wasn't, and it's not just Sunderland. I've spoken to lads. There's no vegan diets then. But I've spoken to lads that played at Newcastle and lads who I would know, and it was pretty much the same. Didn't enjoy, and it's nothing. It's just I felt as though personally the scrutiny that you're under when you're going out for a coffee in an afternoon, whether you were going shopping, whether you were going out for a meal with your partners, wives, whatever it would be. I just felt as though it was too much.
Yeah, that's Kev, a conversation with Keith yesterday. You can check out that full thing on offtheball.com. Garry Breen, good morning to you.
Good morning, guys.
Was that your 3 years at Sunderland, I think? Was that your experience of the intenseness that comes with playing at a club like that?
You're certainly aware of it, but I didn't have any scenarios like Kev said there about people coming up to me. I'm not sure if I was particularly welcoming in terms of coming up to me in my private time as such, but it was a great place to play football, but that's the pressure that comes with it, that when it's a one-club city like Sunderland, like Newcastle, then everyone is on you as such. So if you do walk out, they want to come up to you. But as Keith said there, and as Nave said there, Kev is so welcoming to everyone as such, and probably that's why they felt they could sit down with him. And when he's having a meal with his wife, I'm not quite sure if it would lasted 20 minutes for me.
I think that's the thing that most people were asking themselves yesterday. Did you just finally on it? Because a lot of people would have seen. I don't know if you've watched the Sunderland documentary on Netflix, but a lot of people would have seen it. And it does seem like it's a pretty intense thing. Even in the last episode, it's Chris Coleman sort of leaving the club, and a fan comes up to him, and there's almost a physical fight between the two of them. Like, it does seem like a very different football environment, maybe than a lot of other cities.
Yeah, no, I've not seen that documentary yet, and I'm looking forward to watching it. But my experience of it was a great time, coupled with a really bad time, because Mick McCarthy overachieved in terms of getting us back in the Premier League and was hung out to dry. We had £3 million to spend on players, which included their wages. I remember a story when we played Chelsea early on in that Premier League season that Mick McCarthy was telling that to Jose Mourinho, he started bursting out laughing. He said it's ridiculous, and then all the feel-good factor that you built by winning the championship so comfortably as we did goes out the window because we were hung out to dry. The supporters are frustrated. But I can understand it's a fantastic club. It really is, and I would encourage any player to go and play in the North East. It's a wonderful place to play football, but it's not for the faint-hearted. You have to be mentally strong to cope with the pressures, and then when it doesn't go particularly well, those supporters are demanding.
Yeah, and when they sit down with you to sort of break bread, tell them to sling their hook. United Spurs obviously is live on Off the Ball this Sunday. You're going to be there, Gary, in the company of Nathan, I believe, on Sunday, so we're looking forward to this game. And there's so much intrigue about it, the resurgence that's happening at United under Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, the Pochettino links with United, that battle potentially for third and fourth here. Which camp are you in when it comes to Solskjaer? Are you in the he's had a decent run but he's not really played anybody yet, or this guy is the Ferguson second coming?
I think ultimately I'm that first part. I don't think he's had a body of work that merits getting a Manchester United job. That's not to say that he can't potentially do it in the future. But if you're saying to me in terms of do you take Solskjaer or do you take Pochettino potentially, I know we're guessing whether or not he is the next manager, then Pochettino's body of work, his record is far superior to Solskjaer, far superior to many of the managers linked to Manchester United, bearing in mind that he's been doing it in the Premier League. Solskjaer's done brilliant in terms of finding a system that suits those Manchester United players. Ultimately, it's attack because they can't particularly defend well, and it suits the club's DNA, and he's been quick to play along to it in terms of attacking is our strength. But what is incredible and what is fascinating about all of this is that obviously the Manchester United hierarchy have to make sure that they're putting plans in place now to find a permanent manager in the summer. Now, there's no way in my mind that they're not doing this right now. But the very fact that Ole Solskjaer is doing so well, and people are saying, well, listen, can he potentially get the job? There's no way that those Manchester United hierarchy can be caught in other managers and saying and doing all the work behind the scenes and then saying to him, hold on a minute, listen, just hold fire a little bit here because Solskjaer's doing so well. They're not going to accept that. They want to know now whether or not they're going to get the job. Now, I think they'll be delighted with what he's done in terms of getting the feel-good factor back to Manchester United. But if he was to continue winning, it puts them in a really difficult position because the fans don't care about his body of work. They want to know that they've got a manager who's synonymous with Manchester United. So I think it's a difficult one. I think you're looking past histories in terms of managers getting jobs that they didn't warrant, the likes of Roberto Di Matteo getting the Chelsea job on the back of winning the Champions League. That proved to be a wrong decision. You can argue then, and the flip side of that is that Southgate gets the England job with no body of work that suggests he should have got it, but has made an absolute success of it. So it's difficult. The only thing I will say is that this is a massive test for him now against Tottenham. United have been brilliant in those 5 games. Of course, they are attacking football, but Tottenham will ask questions of them that those previous 5 games didn't.
Just on that managerial change, if it is going to be a managerial change for Manchester United this summer, they need to make a decision soon for the reasons you've just outlined. Exactly. When do you think that decision needs to be made? Is it at the back end of the PSG tie? And I guess if they've beaten PSG at that point, do you automatically say to Solskjaer, that's good enough, we're on track for top 4 potentially as well. You get the job, or what do they do? How do they react? Because I presume they'll have to make a decision maybe in a month.
Well, this is the problem. And if you think about this hierarchy at United, they have not been decisive enough. They weren't decisive enough when Pep Guardiola came out of his sabbatical and ended up going to Bayern Munich. They weren't decisive enough when they were flirting with Pochettino a couple of seasons ago. With hindsight now, that would have been the time to bring him in. So I don't know what they're going to do. I think the very fact that Solskjaer is doing so well and suddenly the United fans are buying into it puts a lot of pressure on them. Because ultimately, if Pochettino was to get that United job in the summer and Solskjaer has done so well, it's going to put massive pressure on him. This is a massive rebuilding job. There's no doubt about it. And there'll be a few bumps in the road. And as soon as that happens, those United fans will start saying, well, why didn't we give it to Solskjaer? He understands United. So it's a real difficult one. I think ultimately, if Pochettino was going to take over from Mourinho, it needed to be a clean break. It needed to be instant so that the whole of the United faithful were backing him completely. So I think this has got a lot of twists and turns to go at the moment. But certainly in terms of leading into this game, I think it'd be a brilliant game.
I mean, if United go ahead and beat Spurs on Sunday, maybe that rebuilding job, Gary, looks like a slightly less thing. I don't know. What are you seeing? Pat Nevin was on with us during the week, and like he was talking about the evidence of some of the work that Solskjaer's been doing with the players, because I'm assuming these are the conversations that the United hierarchy are having. You know, it's not, I suppose, solely a results-driven business for them in this context. What are you seeing on the pitch that's evidence that Solskjaer could actually handle this job in the long term?
Well, I've not seen it yet. I've seen what he's done in terms of his impact, in terms of cajoling all the players and making them happy and taking them away to Dubai, and everything's great, and that's brilliant. Yeah. When the sun's shining and the birds are singing, these players will play for you. That was never the issue. It's whether or not they can cope in the intense demands for a winter period and stuff like that. So the honeymoon period has certainly suited Manchester United brilliantly, and that's not to take anything away from Solskjaer. He's identified what was needed, and he's given those players exactly that. Now, if you're asking me, are these players, those same players, capable of doing that in the long term to get Manchester United back to where they believe they belong, and ultimately what we normally associate with them is at the top of the Premier League, competing at the highest table, the biggest table in Europe? I don't think they are. So listen, what will be fascinating now going into these tough games? You've got the likes of Tottenham, Arsenal in the FA Cup, PSG, Liverpool as well. How do they cope with that type of pressure when they're up against better teams? And how will Solskjaer react to it as well, in terms of the inevitable fact that they'll be under the cosh a lot more than they have been over the last 5 games? It is fascinating. If you're asking me to make a call now, no, I don't think they'll cope particularly well with it, because I don't think they've got a good enough defence. The very fact that he feels that attack is the best form of defence is obvious. He has to play on the front foot, because you can't rely on that defence to keep teams out. And the real strange scenario is that Jose Mourinho recognised that and then started playing his midfielders as defensive midfielders when they're not good at that either. So he was compounding them out. At least Solskjaer said, well, listen, Pogba, go and attack. And he has certainly been rejuvenated.
Yeah, and as you say, maybe that only sort of gets you so far. From Pochettino's point of view, before we leave that specific aspect of it, Gary, do you think that, like he's talking this week about, I'd like to be here for 20 years? I mean, I think that it felt like a give me more money to spend with this team and I'll stay here for 20 years type conversation. Yeah. Like if United are approaching him now and they're sitting down in a service station somewhere having in a little chef having a bit of a conversation with him, saying, listen, this might be something that's on the table, what would you be advising Pochettino to do? Does he stay at Tottenham, hopefully get a little bit of money and build them into ultimately a better team than United over the 5 or 6 years, or does he jump?
Well, listen, it's very difficult to give any advice to him in terms of a success he's made of his managerial career. He's been spot on in everything he's done. Initially, he came into Southampton, and a lot of people, pundits in England, high-profile ones associated with Southampton, were saying, well, who is this guy? And that's lazy. Go and look at his work he was done at Espanyol. Impact straight away at Southampton, but recognise that there was a ceiling and went to Tottenham. Now, he's focused enough to think, and I think he'll know that when the ceiling's been reached at Tottenham. There's all well and good saying about this 20 years. That's highly unlikely. The very fact that Madrid, I don't see that really happening. I know people talk about Madrid coming in for you and you've got a decision to make, but I think this is a difficult time at Madrid. They're trying to redevelop their stadium, which is going to cost in excess of 500 million. They've got to rebuild a team. They don't have the financial muscle of previous years. So it's a difficult one. I think you probably look at the Madrid scenario and think, well, listen, that's a difficult one, and that's a job that comes around often, so he hasn't got to make a big decision on that. The United job is one that doesn't come around very often, so that is the big decision he has to make. But I think in terms of him leaving Tottenham, it'd be an absolute disaster in terms of everything he's built there. If they lose him now, going into the new stadium, I just don't think they'll recover.
Yeah, from a United point of view, by the way, it does strike me that the easiest thing for the United hierarchy would be if United were to go on a losing run. That actually it sort of makes up their mind a little bit in a little bit more of a straightforward fashion. You mentioned a bit earlier on about Solskjaer's attacking policy. Do you expect that's something that'll continue then? And it sounds like it does on Sunday. Who do you think is going to win this one?
Well, I think ultimately I look at the fact that Tottenham are so good in and around that 10 area. It's not a case of the old-fashioned 10 who stays in there. They rotate with Eriksen, Ali, Kane even dropping in, Son, Sissoko from centre midfield. So that fluid movement will cause problems for United defensively. I know that they'll try and attack with the 6 players. Their fullbacks will get in advanced areas. They'll try and hold 2 midfielders in front of the centre half, but I don't think they'll be good enough to stop Tottenham. Having said that, if you look at the qualities that Solskjaer has got in that United team, and that's that pace up front, Rashford through the middle, Pogba breaking from, they can punish Tottenham in a way that Wolves did at Wembley, where they caught them on the counter-attack. But it's a difficult one to call, it really is. United have the players to punish Tottenham, but I just feel that Tottenham have the team ethos, the know-how over the 4.5 years they've been with Pochettino to put this United team to the sword.
Yeah, it was one point that we wanted to end on, Owen.
Yeah, well, I guess we haven't had you on since Christmas, Gary. Over the course of Christmas, there was a worrying run of form for Seamus Coleman, which eventually resulted in him being dropped by Marco Silva. Kevin was saying on the show this week and at a media event that he needs to adapt his game to get to the next level. Would you agree with that?
I think what ultimately, when I look at what's happened with Seamus, I think initially when you come back from a long-term injury, I think I said it to you guys before, the excitement of coming back, there's a natural high, you're great, but then there's a lull after that. And I think he's probably experiencing that a little bit now. I think it'll be difficult for him in terms of the fact that I don't think he's ever been dropped before at Everton. You know, he's always been one of the first names on the team sheet. But if you're asking me, can he recover? I don't know him personally, but if I look in terms of his character and what I've seen him as a player, how well he took to that captaincy of Ireland, that he's a leader, then I think he will recover. But it's a challenge that we've all faced when you get a little bit older, that you've got to cope with, that your body has changed. You have to adapt your game slightly. Of course you do. And we'll have to see whether or not he's able to do it. But if you're asking me, do I feel and do I back him to do it, then absolutely.
All right, Gary, we did want to talk to you about Declan Rice, but I'm sure you won't be disappointed to hear that we've run out of time on that one. I'm sure it'll be back in the agenda at some point over the next few weeks as well. Thanks a million. Enjoy the games over the weekend.
Thanks, guys. Have a good weekend.
Cheers. Thanks a lot. Gary Breen on the line there previewing the weekend's action. David Mannion on YouTube says, Leinster and Munster to win, Ulster to lose, #OTBAM. Can I have the tickets?
Well, he's asked nicely.
He's asked nicely. I mean, I'm tempted by that, but it'll be in the lap of Tommy, David, so we'll see. We'll bring that winner before the end of the show.
Just one of the thoughts I had on what Gary was saying there, in terms of if the offer comes in from Maurizio Pochettino from any club, like, you have to say yes at this point, no matter what Daniel Levy offers, I think. Because I think in the short term, we're talking 2-3 years.
Well, you're talking about United Madrid, is that what you're talking about?
Yes.
Yeah.
Like, ultimately, I don't know, it's stupid to compare a managerial career to a playing career, but if Seamus Coleman had his time back, would he be as loyal to Everton as he had been, for example? I know that the injury came at a very bad time and maybe his loyalty would have been tested a little bit more.
And also you wonder how strong the injury approaches at any point for Seamus Coleman were. Like, we don't know, but a factor.
As a general point, as I say, it's not ideal comparing it to a player because age gets in the way and injuries can happen. But I think it kind of applies to a manager that a lot of these careers do end in failure, or at least a lot of these times that a club does. Maurizio Pochettino is an outstanding football manager. But ultimately, could the expectations of Tottenham Hotspur exceed to the point where his room for failure becomes smaller and smaller and smaller, and ultimately that one chance of keeping himself in that top rung of worldwide managers disappears, and his chance to manage Real Madrid or Manchester United goes with it?
That conversation is predicated on whatever Daniel Levy is saying to him in terms of his potential pot to buy players. I think that's really the only thing that's standing in the way of. He's got an exceptionally talented group of Tottenham players. He's hardly added to in the couple of years that he's been there. But I do think if I'm Pochettino, I'm saying, listen, I need some money because we need to kick this. If we're going to win the Premier League, I need some money. Is that there, or is it not there? Are we
underestimating the amount of money that Tottenham require? They didn't sign anybody last summer. It's not like they made cheap signings.
So is that not then the evidence that actually to win the Premier League they do need to make some signings?
I agree, but are we underestimating the number of signings that they need to make potentially?
No, I don't think there's too many players to be bought, but I do think they need to add some if they're going to win that. I did listen to the Peter Crouch podcast. I don't know if you've listened to that. It's definitely worth listening to, but he says that he had a conversation with Daniel Levy at the time that he left Tottenham to go to Stoke, that he didn't want to leave at all, and he sat down with Daniel Levy and said, listen, I don't want to go, and actually I ain't going. He had 2 years left to run his contract. They were bringing in Adebayor, I think, at the time. And Daniel Levy ultimately said to him, well, if you don't go next season, you're not getting a squad number. Make up your mind. And Crouchy said, listen, I mean, maybe I'll reverse that decision. Maybe Stoke isn't such a bad place after all. He's been there for 8 years. Well worth checking out.
Yeah, for sure. That sounds like one. But like, I'm just kind of making the point that you go from £0 million spent to whatever is required. So like you're basically injecting 70 million straight away to get the quality of player that's required.
Yeah, which is not a lot for winning the Premier League and the Champions League.
And then you add a second player. So Daniel Levy basically increases his transfer spend. If you're going to save 2 60 million players, for example, goes from £0 to £120 million to create a title-winning squad on the back of building a new stadium, I'm not convinced that an investment is going to happen.
Off the ball, we're going to preview the Dublin Racing Festival from the Sugar Club on Thursday, January 24th, and you have the chance to be there. We have an all-star lineup from the world of racing and beyond, including Niall Quinn is going to be there, Nicky English will be there, Davy Russell, Rachel Blackmore, Patrick Mullins alongside Kevin Caban, Johnny Ward, Ger Gilroy and John Duggan. So a cast of thousands and a cast of stars as well. We're going to be previewing the Dublin Racing Festival, which promises to be a massive weekend taking place at Leopardstown. It's the 2nd and 3rd of February. It's all with thanks to the Dublin Racing Festival at Leopardstown Racecourse. You can get your tickets for the festival now at leopardstown.com. So that is all of that stuff. Loads of comments coming in. We'll bring you the winner of our tickets for Leinster to Luce before the end of the show. But before all of that, we gazed into our crystal ball for 2019. Yesterday afternoon, Ger Nathan joined Owen and myself in studio. We looked ahead to predict the biggest sporting events of 2019. We're just asking that you don't hold us to any of this. Hey, welcome back to Friday's OTBAM, where we've got a studio full of people that were handy. So we've done the sort of rating the RTE canteen job. Nathan, Owen and Ger are along. Good afternoon, good morning and good evening to all of you.
How are you?
It's the segment that we're describing as the sort of leftovers from the Christmas, where we'd phenomenal ideas pre-Christmas, just too many of them really to get away before the Christmas period. And this is a bit of a New Year hangover.
You're taking the piss now. It's what date is it today? The
9th?
10th?
11th.
The 11th.
Friday the 11th of January.
It is Friday the 11th of January.
Sometime between sort of 8 and 9 o'clock.
Doing your New Year's predictions panel.
Yeah, well, that's exactly what we're doing, in case you've missed that part of it. It's an opportunity
Some of us were working last week and some others, so we missed out on the first week of the year.
We've been here?
Oh, I have been here.
Right.
Don't you worry about that.
How many shows have you done in the last 3 months, Adrian?
Well, I mean, I was back at it and back in the studio from Wednesday, Ger, actually, as it turns out, this week. Let's not get into too much detail.
I had proposed last week that we buy some balloons and marking a return to the office.
Well, that was
we've missed you.
Sorry, that was his first proposal. His second one was a giant poster with "Have you seen this man?"
Well, the good thing about Nathan's ideas is generally that they never actually manifest themselves in any way other than
we spread it around the office everywhere. We all enjoyed that.
We 20 minutes entertained.
That's very appropriate.
Good. Well, enough taking the piss out of me, because what we're going to do is get your thoughts on predictions on the year ahead as to sort of who's going to win the various tournaments. Major tournaments, really, what we're sticking to here. We're not getting into too much sort of detail about the
FA Cup
or FA Cup, Carabao Cup, any of that kind of good stuff.
FA Cup.
Well, obviously.
So we're going to spend an allotted amount of time, short amount of time on each of these topics, and we're going to run through them. We're going to get your rationale, we're going to get your predictions, we're going to kick things off with the Premier League, Nathan, as our resident Premier League commentator. They've overhauled City now, and a good chance at Liverpool. This is a bit of a procession for them, really.
I wouldn't say a procession, but I think they'll win the league. I'd be very...
Any chance that they do in Newcastle here, given the period of time that's been between drinks?
No, I don't think it's going to be because of the pressure. The only thing I think that could stop them is that City are so good. City could win 15 games in a row between now and the end of the season, and may just make it impossible for Liverpool to overhaul their points tally. But Liverpool have played the vast majority of the best teams away from home already. They have to go to Old Trafford, that's it. They've Spurs and Chelsea left to come to Anfield. They are 14 from 14 against the teams outside the top 6. So you would expect them to keep that up. And at home for the last, nearly 2 years at this stage, they're unbeaten. So I just think the Anfield factor is going to see them over the line. They've got a good run of fixtures over the next 5-6 weeks. They're out of the FA Cup. They've come through the busiest part of the season until the City game unscathed. And I don't think it'll be a procession, but I think they'll win this league. I don't want to say comfortably.
Oh, you're just about to say comfortably.
By 5 or 6 points.
That's comfortably.
I think Liverpool by 6 as well. I think
here we all think Liverpool are going to win the league. This is crap.
Yeah.
This is the worst segment in
we'll get through this one quickly. Bear with us.
BAM ever.
Unfortunately so. I wish there was sort of a sticking point here, but the fact is Manchester City's depth is overrated. Playing Laporte at left back when Fernandinho went, Gundogan can't do that job. That was the thing we learned from Christmas time. And Liverpool do have depth. Maybe if Virgil van Dijk gets injured then they're screwed, but attacking wise they've got plenty of options. I would say even plenty of options to go 6, 7, 8 points.
If Virgil van Dijk gets injured, they're screwed.
Well, that's what I just said. That's the one player that they don't have a backup to that's equally good, and Alisson, I guess. So maybe there's another...
Any Blavin out? Any prognosis on him?
If Virgil van Dijk gets injured tomorrow, they have a problem. But if Gomez is back and Matip are back and Van Dijk ends up missing a month of the season later on, they'll do okay. They'll be able to survive.
The confidence, the team, the Jenga piece that he is, starting plays. I just think that he injects confidence into the team in the way that very few other individuals have a similar impact on their team in world football at the moment.
It's hard to disagree, but I still feel that even before Van Dijk was there, Liverpool at home were quite good. They don't have a huge amount of difficult fixtures left.
If City go on and win every game between now and the end of the season,
they'll win the league.
By only about 2 points, though.
They do have Manchester Derby to come, which is an energy-sapping thing. It comes in around the Champions League latter stages as well. There's a possibility that they at some point sort of fade off and actually concentrate on the Champions League.
I don't know if they'll ever fully fade off and concentrate in the Champions League, but again, you look at the next 5-6 weeks. Before Liverpool play United at the end of February, Chelsea have to play both Arsenal and Chelsea. So even a couple of draws, even drop points there.
City of Arsenal and Chelsea for the first leg.
We've all agreed this is terrible.
Liverpool. A clean sweep of Liverpool is what we're going there. Liverpool all the way. I hope we don't get consensus on all these categories. It's on to the Champions League. One English winner in the last decade.
Hang on, how does the TV know what I picked already?
Last 5 winners have all been from Spain, Ger. Is that going to continue?
No, Liverpool are going to win the Champions League.
All right.
Yeah.
I was told my predictions were wild, but
that's not a wild prediction.
Give us your rationale.
I think that this is a team that has benefited from the experience last year. I mean, I was definitely of the view that if they were struggling the last day, they should throw the game and get out and just concentrate in the league. But now I've decided, screw it. Like, what's the point in being in these competitions except to win it? They have a dynamism about them that I think the two-legged nature of everything up into the final is something that they benefit from. There's a brains and just a sense of understanding how games ebb and flow. For example, if they had to play Manchester City again in a second leg after the defeat last week, I would back them to go through at this point.
Isn't it ridiculous to suggest that Liverpool are going to win the Premier League and the Champions League this season?
Well, I'm going to be right about one of them. This isn't
don't hold me to account on all of these.
You're asking for predictions. We're not going to get everything right, so I may as well be gloriously wrong on one of them.
Barcelona are going to win the Champions League. And it's kind of has to do with the idea that Liverpool and Manchester City, in my view, are just incapable of doing so this season. I think Liverpool are going to become preoccupied with the Premier League. They talk about the idea. Well, I can speak among these people. I do believe that we talk about the whole idea of history bogging this Liverpool team down. I think the one thing that's going to bog this Liverpool team down is the obsession with this year's Premier League. Jurgen Klopp didn't care that they got knocked out of the FA Cup, and not for one second am I comparing the FA Cup to the Champions League. But I do believe there is a singular focus on the Champions League from a Liverpool perspective, which isn't going to serve them too well in Europe, particularly if they're well in the running going down the line. Also, it's quite simple. If you've got a team that's got Messi, Suarez and Ousmane Dembele, who's finally started firing for Barcelona, then you've got a pretty good chance. The one thing is, can they get Philippe Coutinho back into some sort of form or finally hit some sort of purple patch for Barcelona? Then they're onto something. Like, I do have reservations, and I can see why people have reservations about maybe the midfield. Are Vidal and Arthur actual Champions League winning? Are they part of a Champions League winning midfield? And also, who's going to partner Piqué at the heart of the defence?
I disagree with both of them. This time last year I thought Liverpool would go deep into the Champions League because their style of play was so well suited against better teams. This season they've sort of flipped their style of play, and actually I think it suits better against the weaker teams in the Premier League, but actually they're a bit smarter, they're a bit more controlled against quality opposition like they will face in the Champions League. I don't think they're going to go on this blitz that they went on at the end of last season, and I think they'll just be outdone by somebody along the way.
Who's going to win it is the question.
Atletico Madrid, I think, are going to win it.
Right.
I cannot go along with Barcelona. I've seen a lot of them in the Champions League. They're a disgrace at the back. They are an absolute shambles.
Piqué ain't Piqué anymore.
Defensively. Piqué ain't Piqué, Busquets ain't Busquets. And the midfield, if Busquets ain't Busquets, Arthur,
Piqué's a business mogul who owns tennis.
They're not near it.
Like,
still top of the Liga.
Now, there is the Messi factor, which is he could, once again, just show that he's the greatest player of all time and single-handedly destroy team after team after team, which if he does, brilliant.
Sometimes predictions are a simple game.
We don't want to see it. Whoever comes through, Atletico Madrid, Juventus, and I think Atletico Madrid will.
We're having 4 different predictions here. City is my pick for a lot of the reasons that I said about the Premier League, and I concur with a lot of your thoughts about Liverpool, that I think that singular focus is the way forward for them this year. I think that City at some point, maybe 3 or 4 games to go in the Premier League season, will be out of it. They'll concentrate on the Champions League. It's unthinkable that Pep gets to the end of a 3rd year with only 1 significant trophy to his name is probably a big part of my rationale. They've also had such an easy run up to this point. Hoffenheim and some of the shit teams in their group, Schalke obviously in the last 16, won't have taken a huge amount out of them, and I think that that's my rationale. I think Pep getting to the end of his 3rd year at City, having won only 1 major trophy, would be an absolute failure, and I can't see it happening.
It's probably going to be none of those 4, is it?
4 different picks. I like it.
It is a team that won 3 of the last 4. Or 3 in a row.
We're
shock horror. We're shocked as Real Madrid.
We're shifting sports here on. We're moving on to the Six Nations. I mean, we could, on the evidence of November internationals, be seeing an England resurgence here, but what way are you going?
Well, England coming to Dublin means it's Ireland's easy year. They're going to win the Six Nations. They're probably not going to win the Grand Slam, just because I think our card is marked by everybody.
So where do they come a cropper then?
At Principality Stadium. They're going to lose to Wales, and it's such an easy answer. But there's a reason why it's an easy answer. It's because, like, when it comes to our easy year, like we've obviously managed to do it in 2009, getting the win there on the last day of the campaign, and every sort of element you speak of in terms of comparing man for man of Ireland to any other team in the Six Nations, we are clearly the superior team. I just can't see how we can lose more than one game, and I think that one game is going to be on the road. I don't see us losing in that.
That's the last game. So for the second year running, you're saying we'll have this thing wrapped up before we even get to the final.
Yes.
Game? Wow.
Yes.
I think Ireland will win the Six
Resident
Nations.
rugby man.
Wow.
I mean, I'm just reading the Examiner.
Bit harsh on
I was just reading your article in the Examiner this week, and it said rugby in particular was the phrase that it used. So
did it?
Do you have an Examiner column?
There was a feature article on. Look it up. It's
I really must look this up.
For a lot of reasons, it's absolutely
your New
amazing.
Year's regime obviously isn't working so well since you got the photograph taken.
Oh, Jesus Christ!
Wow.
Shots fired.
Says the man who was straight out to the marketing department going, are all our photos going to
Yeah, exactly.
We're all interested in that question.
100%.
By the way, if anybody out there has not read Nathan's piece in the Examiner this week, he gave an interview to
The Examiner. Esther and the Examiner.
Esther who? Nathan, I mean... You know.
Don't be a dickhead.
Anyway, go and check it out.
It's hard for him.
It's
hard for him because he gets his natural inclination.
It's a tangent, but it's a great piece.
Ireland
Please
will win the Six Nations, but not the Grand
go and
Slam.
check it out. Right?
I agree with Owen.
They'd fall at Wales.
That in post.
Yeah, or possibly fall against England at home. I don't think it'll be that straightforward, particularly if Sexton comes a cropper.
Yeah, we are managing.
Wales are going to win the Grand Slam. Wales are going to win the Six Nations. I don't know about the Grand Slam. I think Wales have been quietly over the last 18 months giving opportunities to countless players. They had a brilliant November series, which they never do. Gatland has been no doubt looking at this non-stop hagiography of Joe Schmidt going, hang on a second, I'm the best New Zealand coach coaching outside of New Zealand, and I have never once been linked with the All Blacks job. What the hell?
But he's going to wait for the World Cup to do the ambush.
I think he's going to have a slaloming run this year.
A few injuries coming in. Halfpenny, I read this week, is out for the first important player for them, obviously out for the first few weeks.
Yeah, I mean, I think they actually now have enough strength in that to be able to deal with Lee Halfpenny missing. Just a quick word as an aside on that. He's still injured from that late tackle that wasn't a yellow card. There wasn't a red card from the November internationals when that was outrageous. This is exactly why rugby is struggling the way it is. Key players like that missing months and months and months with brain injuries as a result of late tackles. Come on.
Yeah, I'm going for Ireland as well. I think that's 3 versus 1. I'm going for Ireland as well. Don't think they'll get the slam done. Probably go along with a lot of your rationale. I do. There's one caveat for me, and it's if they pick up some injuries, which they're already going into the tournament with, the likes of obviously Sexton and Henshaw. And a few others, O'Mahony, a few other players with knocks. At some point or another, Schmidt might look to start trying to manage some of these players, obviously with the year that's in it. I know the World Cup is a long way away, but he may look to start managing some of the players. That's my one little caveat about Ireland, that if halfway through the tournament Sexton's walking around on one leg, there may be a temptation.
Six Nations matters not.
Yank him out of there. Well, only for the momentum, right?
Well, that's all bollocks. We traditionally win these, don't we?
No, but do you not? Well, did England not win it the year they won the World Cup and destroy everybody in front of us?
I think the message you would send out.
7.
But do you not want? Do you not want to go into the World Cup as the best team in the world? Everybody scared shitless of you, thinking, this team has shown for the last 18 months.
Don't care.
We can't get them.
How you appear on the day of the match is what matters. All that stuff that goes before that is completely irrelevant for a team of Ireland's quality at this point. It's like Ireland hammering Scotland in the Six Nations means nothing the day of the Ireland-Scotland game in the World Cup.
Okay. One vote for Wales. The third favourites, they are, because I looked this up, 9-2.
It's a good bet.
Are you on it?
I'm not at the moment.
Getting on it soon. Backing up your bet is what I'm asking you here.
Yeah, 100%. I would definitely. That's a legitimate. Liverpool are not going to do the Champions League and Premier League double, but there's a really good chance that Wales are going to win this thing. They've got Ireland at home.
You've literally just said earlier on that they're going to win the Premier League and the Champions League.
Yeah, it's unlikely that they're going to do both. They will do one of those. They'll do one of those, and I'll be right about one of them.
Which will make me. What we're going to take is the clip of him going, "Liverpool. There's no way Liverpool are going to win the Champions League and the Premier League double."
Champions Cup, Leinster 7-4 favourites to win it. They've had a bit of a wobble, obviously. It's Saracens, Racing, and Munster in that order after them in terms of the
What
favourites.
odds on Munster?
9-1.
So the final is this year in Bilbao.
No,
No, it was in
Newcastle
Bilbao last year. You were there.
Last year.
Newcastle.
Newcastle this year. Yeah.
What are you thinking?
I'm thinking that it's going to be Munster, that Joey Carbery is going to kick Munster to glory in the European Cup final.
Do you like Joey Carbery, you do?
And that, well, I would be much more happy about this prediction if I knew what the injury prognosis was for Chris Farrell when this was taping, because in the meantime the news has come out about his injury, and so I just that would have been, if they have a full deck, I think that all of the issues they've ever had over the last 3 or 4 seasons, when they've been perilously close to winning this thing, like they get hammered in a semi-final, everybody's, oh, they're miles behind, but actually fix a few little things, and we see in rugby all the time in those back-to-backs that if you fix a few things from one week to the next, then you can affect a massive turnaround really quickly. I just think Munster are at the moment the most dangerous team. Hard for teams to defend the situation.
That's in the most dangerous, the most likely to win the Champions Cup.
From my money on.
I think if you're going against that Leinster pack in knockout rugby, it's absolutely ludicrous. Assuming there isn't just a barrage of bizarre injuries, especially in the Tide 5. Name any other team in Europe that can come close to Healy, Furlong, Sean Cronin, Toner, James Ryan.
We've just seen Munster beat them.
And we have in Thomond Park. We have. Like, that is one caveat to all of this.
Yeah.
Not knockout rugby.
Week.
Not knockout rugby.
No, sure enough. But, like,
again, that seemingly did matter, for sure.
Yeah.
I would not be judging Leinster on what we've seen up until this point.
To go back to back. Like, so, Leinster have done it, Toulouse have done it, Saracens did it, but, like, the greatest teams of all time do it.
Mm. So what are you saying? I don't. You're countering.
I just can't really see. I can see why you have a hunch that Munster are going to win it. I just.
Hey, that's my prediction. I predicted.
Look, this is the man earlier on who said Liverpool are going to win the Premier League and the Champions League, but not both.
I guess I'm kind of going against the actual whole point of this segment, but it's just.
What are you saying?
It's just, I think Leinster are so far in front of everybody still.
You're not worried about the wobble?
I think it actually gives me more conviction in what I'm saying here. I think an angry Leinster are an even more dangerous Leinster. An angry Johnny Sexton in particular is a very, very dangerous Johnny
Sexton. Might not play again for Leinster in the competition.
Chris Farrell may not play again for Munster in the competition.
Johnny Sexton is far more important to Leinster than Farrell is to
This is the problem with making any rugby predictions, particularly ahead of a Champions Cup weekend. Both Leinster and Munster are probably going to end up, after the Six Nations, missing 2 players for their Champions Cup quarter-final.
And who's best equipped to deal with that?
Like, and that could be any 2 players. Like, if that's Sexton...
Well, if it's Amani and Murray, Munster are out. Yeah.
Whereas I think Leinster can take the injuries and you can trust them.
To a point.
Munster, everybody, full 15, fully fit, you would give them a fighting chance of beating Leinster even in a Champions Cup final. But 1 or 2 injuries and they've got a huge problem. Where I think, aside from Sexton, Leinster can take anything. Can take anything. So you're I don't know if they'll go through the season and put in one of the greatest individual performances of any team we've ever seen, Adrian. But hopefully they will get to that level again.
Said that.
In any sport.
In any sport.
If somebody actually said that, I love the way it's actually morphed into some other bullshit.
It was in any sport.
This is not.
It was after Scarlet semi-final.
But it's not the final. No, it was the final. It was the final. It was the final.
Aviva.
Was
it? It was at the Aviva, yeah.
Anyway, there was wine taken. I'm going with Munster as well. I mean, primarily because they're not, you're going for Leinster. He was for
Leinster, yeah.
Primarily, the 9-1 thing is 100% lured me in, and a lot of the same.
It's not a best bet. It's who you think will win.
Yeah, well, at 9-1, I think Munster are going to win. But yeah, look, I probably agree with some of that. But I mean, the points we're making about if Sexton is taken out of the Leinster team, if Manny's taken out of the Munster team,
none of us think to pick a foreign team. Like one is no.
What did I say? There was
Racing.
Saracens, Racing, the second and third favourites. But yeah, no matter what, any of those teams that you're talking about, you take out the most important players.
What are Toulouse?
They're lesser teams. I don't have Toulouse. I didn't get that far in my research. Sure, it was.
All right. Well, I mean,
had a few days.
We got the call late last night.
Literally had 2 months to prepare for
I thought it was going to be a contributor up to about half an hour ago. So
okay, Jesus, there's airing dirty laundry.
So 2 Munster, 2 Leinster.
Yeah, let's go for it. The two Leinster men being coy and...
It's one of the hardest ones to predict, particularly pre the end of the pool stages.
Yeah.
It's like
well, that's
very
it.
difficult to
If
call.
Toulouse beat Leinster on Saturday, suddenly Leinster facing an away quarter-final, it's a very different look to the competition.
Yeah. Right, Rugby World Cup.
New Zealand.
Woof, well, straight off the bat, I mean, I thought we were going to get a clean sweep here of Ireland, but go on.
The All Blacks, I agree, 100%.
Ger? Just
Wales.
We've moved on from the Six Nations now.
I don't think they'll win both of them, but I think they might win.
Right.
They're more likely, I think that there's a chance that they don't win the Six Nations, but I think Wales are my dark horses / this is the time for this Wales.
But dark horses that might make a semi-final is
No, I think that like the institutional memory of what this group have been through over the last while.
I just can't believe you actually believe Wales are going to win the Six Nations and the World Cup.
What are Wales for the World Cup?
Like...
I don't think. I don't think it's the worst shout ever. In that,
to quote
whereas Ireland are notorious underperformers, Wales are brilliant at overperforming in World Cup years.
True,
and just generally never get the respect or appreciation that they deserve.
But when did they win it?
Sorry, they don't overperform.
You need to win it once.
The red cards that Alain Roland gave to the Welsh captain, whose name momentarily brain fart, Sam Warburton, completely ruined their chances of winning a World Cup when they were going to win that World Cup. There's a really good chance they would have won that World Cup.
But they didn't.
12-1. New Zealand are evens, Ireland are 7-2, South Africa, England, and then Wales are 12-1.
I think South Africa are a way bigger threat than Wales. Way bigger threat. I think if Ireland are going to get knocked out, there's every chance we go out in the quarter-final again to South Africa, and it won't even be that big.
Yeah, well, we've one of, if everything goes, we may have South Africa, obviously, if things stack up the way we think they're going to stack up in the quarter-finals, and after that it's one of England, Wales, France or Australia in the semi-finals. Like one of the biggest things that goes against us is the baggage that we have from these tournaments, like that South Africa won't necessarily have, or New Zealand won't necessarily have if we meet them at that stage of the tournament. That for us, success is actually getting to a semi-final here.
It's not.
No, it's not.
It is. We've never been there before. If we've never been there before, that represents
if we get to a semi-final and lose,
the same argument about we should have tried to get the draw against the All Blacks that time. It was like, that would have been success for us because we never got the draw against them before. It's nonsense.
The only thing is success is winning a World Cup or losing a close final to New Zealand. Anything else is absolute failure.
Obviously, winning. That's just not true.
It is absolute failure for this team.
That's subjective. That is absolutely subjective. Winning the World Cup, clearly winning the World Cup.
We're predicting the future.
Clearly winning the World Cup is absolute success, but it doesn't mean that everything else is failure.
But what I'm saying, the only thing, so there are possibilities. You lose to South Africa by a point after the greatest World Cup game of all time, where Ireland have a player sent off and they valiantly get beaten. But anything else for this group is failure, and I think they look at it themselves that way. It's probably a good thing for the players that it's far away in Japan and they can avoid maybe a little bit of the hype and things like that, because I could see us scraping over the line first day out against Scotland and suddenly there's absolute panic stations that we're back.
Well, also we've also written out we're going to meet South Africa in the quarterfinals. We're going to beat them. They are the team that have run New Zealand closest in the Rugby Championship over the next while. The Six Nations, I think, we're going to know a lot more after the Six Nations in a way that we won't necessarily, that you don't necessarily post the Rugby Championship, because it tends to be a bit of a procession. We'll know a lot more about our teams post the Six Nations.
Who are you going for?
I'm going for Ireland. I'm the only one in the group that's going for Ireland.
I think that is.
Screw you on. 1 Ireland, 2 New Zealand, and 1.
Are they the odds?
New Zealand evens, Ireland 7-2. Yeah.
It's not you're not getting great value for money for the amount of squeaky bum that has to happen.
I just think, from an Irish point of view, like Rory Best at his age, Devin Toner's got a niggle for the first time ever. These are 2 key players of many that need to stay fit.
Well, yeah. Well, we're also getting to a point where we can now, post the last World Cup, almost afford to lose those, particularly Devin Toner.
Can we?
We can, yeah. I mean, Devin Toner may not even start.
I think after the All Blacks, I think he will.
Look, I'm just saying there's not a great fall off.
In fairness, if Ian Henderson starts, nobody's shocked.
Yeah.
No, and Tadhg Beirne potentially.
Yeah, I don't think anybody's shocked.
It is 10 months away.
Like Ireland need 4 big performances in the space of 6 weeks here, and then quarter-final, semi-final, final, 3 in a row. Not picking up too many injuries, all that pressure, all those nerves.
The baggage, Nathan. As may all people know all
Pool D
about.
winner plays runner-up Pool C, which is going to be England, France. So Australia are going to play England or France in the quarters.
I mean, if you were listening 2 minutes ago.
We're going to win that. Wait, what? You told us this?
Yeah.
Who Australia playing?
No, I said that we're going to get one of England, Wales. It's impossible after that to get into, well, if England win that pool. So it's one of England, Wales, France, Australia in the semis first. I.e. we avoid New Zealand until the final, which everybody knows.
Well, South Africa beat them on the first day.
I was in the process of making a beautiful segue there from talking about that to Mayo and into the football championship for 2019. The question I want to ask is, in what year do you think Dublin will not win the All-Ireland Football Championship? When do you see that next happening?
I don't see it not happening. I just think it'll be a one-off freakish result. I think Dublin will win 8 of the next 10 All-Irelands. Kerry will win 1 and somebody else will win 1. It's impossible to make a case for somebody right now head-to-head beating Dublin, but it's not to say that in an All-Ireland semi-final I don't want to say a freak result can happen, but Kerry could beat them, Mayo could beat them, Donegal could beat them. I think they're the only 3.
I think you can make the case, the best way to make the case is that Paul Flynn was a generational talent, that Diarmuid Connolly was a generational talent, and that Bernard Brogan were generational talent, and that actually the lads who are coming behind them have so far within the system, and because of the systemic greatness of the Dublin footballers and the lack of quality in the opposition that they faced, have been able to just about grind out the All-Irelands when those lads have not been at their peak. So the emergence of, is Conor Callaghan as good?
Conor Callaghan is potentially... Who was grinding out All-Ireland?
The Dubs.
They destroyed Tyrone last year. They got up against the greatest Mayo team
no opposition
there has been the previous 2 years.
With Connolly, with the end of Brogan, and with Paul Flynn.
And scraped through. Does that not prove the point that they scraped through, that they're not actually generally pumping teams out?
I don't think any team out there right now...
It's possible to make the case, is my point, right?
Yeah, but I would say there's no team out there right now that is at the level Mayo were at 2 years ago and 3 years ago.
No, that's true.
Physically.
Hang on a second though. Those Mayo teams underperformed. They were not tactically astute. They did not do all the things they were supposed to do. They missed frees at key moments of the games. We have talked this Mayo team into a position of all-time greatness on the basis of legend, when actually, if you were to coldly analyse, they made countless mistakes that I think that if James Horan had been the manager, they wouldn't have made. Right? I just think that that we have retrospectively, because the games were so good, and because they were so dramatic with the own goals and all that stuff that happened, that we've accidentally talked Mayo into being the equivalent of Tyrone or Armagh in the noughties.
No, we haven't.
We have.
No, we haven't.
They won All-Irelands. Nobody is comparing them to Tyrone or Armagh because they didn't win the All-Irelands. But you're right, they were within one kick of the ball of beating what many people feel was the greatest team of all time. I do agree that 2 years ago, 1-15, I think Mayo were a better team than Dublin, 1-15, but didn't win it. But I don't think there's any team right now you could say 1-15 is near this Dublin side.
Well, you talk about the Diarmuid Connolly / Bernard Brogan era, and you talk about the lack of... You didn't say this term, but if you want to subscribe to the theory of no generational talents coming through, well, forget that straight away, because 3 people who are still in their pomp that are automatic generational talents are Brian Fenton, Kieran Kilkenny and Jack McCaffrey. There is no question about that. Then it's up in the air. Is Conor Callaghan a generational talent? I suspect he might be. Is Brian Howard a generational talent?
We don't know.
I suspect he might be.
We don't know yet.
Is Niall Scully a generational talent? Probably a rung below the other 2 lads, but every chance he could be as well. You look at the backs. Is Owen Merchant going to become a generational?
There's almost no case to be made on a 1-15 basis that there's any team in the country that comes close to Dublin.
2021 is when Dublin are not going to win the All-Ireland next. The 7 in a row will be up for debate, and Kerry are going to beat them in 2021.
Well, Banty was in here on Saturday who reckons that this Dublin era will come to an end over the next couple of years, and then we'll be into the era of the great Kerry sides.
That's not true either. That's not true. Dublin will never go away from being in contention every single year. This is just the new reality.
I think the other thing that Dublin have done is that they've decided that they're going to control the games in the basketball style, and that actually allows teams to get a foothold. Okay, so last year Tyrone didn't manage it, right? And nobody managed it because they didn't play anybody who were really good at any point across the season. I think that if they had to play one of the Super 8 games away from... 2 of the Super 8 games away from Croke Park, it might be interesting to see, because that game up in Omagh was not a cakewalk for them. And that's the bit where you start to go, okay, they're just a human team. And maybe Tyrone this year can actually move forward. It'll be interesting to see if Colconey makes it. I don't know if he's going to.
This is the thing. I do believe Dublin the gap is as big as it's ever been. 2018 is the easiest All-Ireland this Dublin team will ever have. It's still going to be easy for them this year, I really believe that, but it's not going to be as easy last year, namely because they surely have to play Mayo or Kerry this year. And like if they'd played that Mayo or Kerry team last year, they would have put them far closer than Galway or Tyrone would have. And I don't care what anybody says about Galway walking over Kerry or Kildare being the much better team than Galway and Newbridge. Kerry and Mayo are still the second and third best teams in the country. Donegal are team number 4. And
number 4, you reckon?
Yeah, and Galway and Tyrone, who were the semi-final and finals last year, are team 5 and 6.
Push them closer. You know, they obviously dominated Ulster last year. They were in the group. They were in the Super 8's group, though. To be fair, of the All-Ireland of both All-Ireland finalists.
I know, but there are going to be injuries. Like already, Michael Murphy has had knee surgery at the start of the year this year, and
Ryan McHugh is back in. The dream team, the managerial dream team, is in place.
I really like Donegal and what they did last year, but it is having absolutely everybody available. If Murphy's fully fit, McBrearty's fully fit, Ryan McHugh is fully fit, they could be the best of the rest.
You need a bit of luck to challenge the Dubs. Like Mayo, to be fair, what big injuries did they have the 2 years they pushed them? Whereas last year when they lost Tom Parsons and they lost Shemi O'Shea, if they had those 2 players for the Kildare game, they probably would have survived.
Are they all gone?
No, the way I look at it is still, Mayo and Kerry are the only 2 teams that could beat Dublin, but there's about 4 other teams then that could beat either any of Mayo or Kerry. Either way, it ends up with Dublin winning the All-Ireland.
Super 8 also is largely fixed to allow Dublin to have any mistakes and get through it.
Jared, the whole thing is fixed for Dublin to win.
I do think one of the most interesting things is outside of that, because obviously it was clearly 4 Dublins, but one of the most interesting things outside of that will be the impact of the Super 8s as the years go on, and the Kildares or the Roscommons over the next few years, those floating teams, do Kildare and Roscommon get the benefit of those Super 8s and maintain their position, or are those teams floating in and out?
Kildare have just lost Daniel Flynn for the year, so
forget about them is what you're saying. They're out. The All-Ireland Hurling Championship is the next port of call. Can Limerick back it up? Tip weren't that far off. We've just spoken about the managerial dream team in Donegal. Obviously Liam Sheedy back in there. Galway are favourites. Highly possible that a Cork or a Clare jump in here somewhere. Nathan, what are you thinking?
I like Cork. I like John Myler. Like what I saw from them last year. They weren't too far away.
Very close. I was looking at it, and a spread of an extra 5 points across 3 games in the Munster, whatever it's called, league.
Championship.
But whatever the new format is, would have resulted in 3 wins, whereas it stood it was a loss and 2 draws.
Yeah, and
that's the grain of rice, isn't it?
I thought they were probably better than Limerick for well over an hour of that All-Ireland semi-final. They just seem to be missing. They're missing a bit of steel or something still. They seem to win I don't want to say the soft games in Munster, but
shots fired against Cork.
The first day
is Cork of lacking bottle.
Remember the first day against Clare? It didn't feel like a Munster Championship game. They ground that out, but no, I think Cork are going to win the All-Ireland.
Of course there's question marks over a character of a team who let that lead slip in an All-Ireland semi-final. There has to be. I think Galway are going to win the All-Ireland, because you talk about missed opportunities last year. Well, Galway, with one of the biggest underperformances by a great team in an All-Ireland final in the last decade, managed to come within a metre of actually getting a replay. They were the best team last summer.
Well, they weren't.
Okay, so when I say best team, I don't mean the team that excited us the most or perhaps got the best out of themselves. I think Clare and Limerick were those 2 teams, but Galway, in terms of just an array of individuals, week after week, you're like, there is quality everywhere. The spine of that Galway team is all-time good.
Yeah, no.
And I think they should have done back-to-back All-Irelands.
So the only counter-argument to that is that Tipperary actually have just as good a spread of individuals. And so this time last year we were like, Tipperary's going to put it together, because they haven't in recent seasons, and finally this team is actually going to click. So I think this is the year with Tipperary, with Liam Sheedy in charge, are actually going to do it, and I think they're my tip.
They're 4-1. By the way, second favourites. Their second favourites at 2-1.
It's a bit short.
They need Jason Ford to do what he did last year. They probably need to unearth a few more players as well. But interesting.
Or Callan to be fit for the whole year, and have one final last season where he's hurler of the year contender.
Nobody's talking about Limerick. Nobody thinks that they can. It's going to be a Clare 2013 thing. Here's what we're thinking.
If they haven't absolutely drank their livers into oblivion over the course of the winter, then they've done it wrong.
Well,
Keane doesn't drink.
Yeah.
Good point. Hurler of the year is safe.
All the Piercing lads, been.
To be fair, it didn't actually seem that way. It does seem that as a team can be equipped mentally to win a back-to-back All-Ireland. After winning their first one, they seem fairly well set until it's actually in the melting pot. I'll be interested to see. It's just in that Munster Championship, I think I finished second last, and they might not even have that bad a campaign.
Cork, Galway. I'm going for Galway as well. Obviously proven they can do it. Unbelievable players. The bit of hunger back after last year, and
did I go for Galway? I thought I went for Tip.
Yeah, no, you did. They stopped.
And Owen, yeah. Okay, 4-1, by the way.
That's too short a price.
I think it's a great price. As second favourites, Galway are 5-2 favourites.
They should be like 7 or 8-1 at this point of the season. Like they've got to come through the hardest qualifying thing in any sport in the world, and then they have to play an all-round semi-final and final.
Without exaggeration, Darren.
Give me the name of a harder thing to come out of.
European qualifiers to the World Cup?
Champions Cup pool stages.
Like if your team...
Okay, of that quality.
Come on.
No, that's fair enough.
Come on. Name one.
Like you're
in this conversation.
I don't know, the AFC South or
AFC. Is there?
There's tough divisions. The West in the NBA is incredibly hard to get out of.
The Championship.
Actually, no, 8
teams in the world.
16 get through.
We'll have to get promotion from the Championship. 46 games.
Promotion from the Championship is about as close.
But right, the final category is Nathan's category, I think. Just Nathan on his own by all accounts. But do feel free, chaps, to chip in if you feel free to get involved. The Masters and the Open, Nathan.
I might start with this one, actually, okay?
Okay, Jerry.
We were in the office and I was like, the winner of this is going to be your man, that guy who's always... what's his name? The guy who's always complaining nobody gives him enough credit for winning. What's his name? The guy who won the majors last year?
Brooks Koepka.
That's it. That guy. He's going to win it. He's just going to win it.
He's already won 3 majors.
Yeah, so 2 more this year. I'm going for him for both
of those. 14-1 for the Open.
Not going to be right about both of them. Right about one of them.
He's not going to win both of them. I'm going for him for both of them. He's not going to win both.
That's how gambling works.
But listen, it's not gambling.
Pretty sure Brooks Koepka has won in Northern Ireland before on the European Challenge Tour.
All right.
I'm pretty sure. Has there ever been a more Nathan Murphy comment, more smug effing comment from anybody? I'm pretty sure Brooks Koepka. Are you though? Are you really?
Just saying.
Jesus Christ.
You were actually up there reporting.
Just saying this may have happened.
Go on.
You were speaking into your little dictaphone with no tape.
It's Jordan Spieth.
Jordan Spieth is my tip for the Masters. It has to be. He is the best player around Augusta we've seen in recent decades.
And he's
played it 5 times. He's finished in the top 3-4 of those occasions. I think he's played.
He's just a boring choice, though, isn't he? He's the safe, boring choice.
No, he's kind of
safe or boring around Jordan Spieth.
Here's the thing about Jordan Spieth. I definitely agree at the start. He kind of bored me. Are the rest of that generation just more boring that Jordan Spieth seems exciting?
I think he's just the smartest of them. There's definitely a lot of
brain dead,
very boring, just jock.
Yeah, Beefcake Koepka, Justin Thomas.
DJ.
Dustin Johnson.
DJ.
Patrick Reed.
Patrick Reed's exciting.
They're kind of interesting in their own way. Like Reed is interesting in that nobody likes him and he has the anti-hero personality. Yeah. Dustin Johnson's interesting because he has other interests outside of golf that
the issues
make him more interesting.
I want to go on a night out with Dustin Johnson.
Last year,
that sounds like more about Juju.
Last year, going into the Masters, Spieth had done very little and didn't really see him just turning it on to Augusta, and then he turns up, led after the first round, final day 64, gave himself a brilliant chance of winning and just came up short. He's always in contention. He should have 3 green jackets at this stage.
Safe and boring is what I'm saying to you. I'm not saying he's safe and boring, I'm saying your choice is safe and boring.
It's going to be a brilliant Masters because you have the storyline of Rory obviously again going for the career Grand Slam, Tiger back,
the 3 of them, Spieth, Tiger, Rory, joint favourites at 10-1, co-favourites.
You see, I'd have Spieth a good bit shorter than Rory.
And Tiger. Tiger's not
and I would have him a good bit shorter.
Tiger's best chance is like a pitch and putt open course in England.
I've been reminded that I've gone for Tiger because I'm not safe and I'm not boring, and that's why I've gone for Tiger Woods.
Yeah, really unsafe option.
Look, he's given loads of indications over the last 12 months or 6 months that he's actually back and he can do this thing and he can play and he can compete and he can contend and he can win, and why not?
It's stuck together with God's glue, and that we all know what happens to that.
No, I think if he goes
God's
there
glue is
fresh, he knows
powerful
every inch of Augusta National, so he can pick his way around it. And it felt at the end of last year, particularly the way he won at Eastlake in the Tour Championship, that there's a little bit, it'll never quite be the same, but a little bit of a fear factor of maybe this is written in the stars. The other players look at him and think, I can't stand his way.
Look at that old man with his fused neck.
I don't think Jordan Spieth can feel that sort of emotion.
No, Spieth won't. That's why Spieth will win this.
Yeah, I think also the fact he didn't get invited to the Tournament of Champions. He's an angry man going
you
into
don't get invited to the Tournament of Champions.
Well, you play your way into it.
It's a very simple, way of qualifying.
Sorry. Let me
you win a tournament
rephrase.
and you get to the Tournament of Champions. He didn't win a tournament, so therefore he doesn't get in.
Sure. So he's there watching it on television. Yeah,
zero wins.
Oh, he's collapsed. He's washed up.
And his putting wasn't what it was.
But yet you're saying 10-1 is too much.
Yeah, because he still very nearly went and won the Masters last year, having a really poor season.
I think he loved Portrush as well. Like with Birkdale when he won the Open last. And I'm not all I'm saying is that's a links course and that's a links course. It's a very simple thing to say. And last year was at the links as well.
So you're going Spieth, Masters, Koepka Open.
No,
sorry.
Koepka Open.
Yeah, you did say. I'm pretty sure you're smoking.
I think.
I'm pretty sure you're fine.
That's a long way. It's never been played at Portrush before. None of these players have played an Open. Tiger. Nice.
Did you not just rubbish my... I know you did sort of substantiate it slightly.
Like, it all depends on the weather, how windy it is up there, but right now I would probably go...
He went for Garcia for the Open, apparently.
Did I? Shit. Sergio's who I'm calling. Sergio. I fully believe that Sergio is going to win the Open.
Jesus Christ.
I went for Brooks, but Tiger I could accept. I think if he's going to win anything, it's going to
Sergio Garcia is going to win the Open at Portrush.
Why?
Listen.
I mean, because he said it earlier on, and then he
has the monkey off his back with a major. He's settling into married life, and
how has he done in major since that monkey's come off the back?
He's done very little, but you see, links course, rub it in Harrington's face.
Rory's going to do it. Rory's going to get the Open, and he's going to come back on and remind us all in Europe about what this amazing talent is all about. Who are you going for?
Well, I kind of went for the Gilroy technique of just picking Spieth for both of them.
All right,
just shoot for the stars, land on the moon.
Boring and stays.
I gave a reason why Spieth's going to win the Open as well, because that's a links course, which is very unusual for the Open.
Any final random predictions for 2019? You can draw out of your jar, particularly if you get any more wild bits.
That you might get a full 3 hours out of a Friday show some morning.
Right, that is it from... Thanks very much for getting up so early in the morning, lads, and coming in. You're
anytime.
Absolute saints for doing this. I really appreciate it. Myself and Eoin are off to change our jumpers for the next segment, which I believe is going to be sensational.
Yeah, it certainly is. And congratulations to Nathan Murphy. You were into our third hour this morning, so very happy new year to you. That is our lot this morning from OTBAM, and congratulations before we leave you to our competition winners. First of all, Stephen Elliott, congratulations to you. He got in touch to say big worries ahead for Leinster without Sexton, Henshaw and Carney. If true that Devin Toner and Dan Levy is out, it's a big ask for the defending champions. It certainly is. And Adam James is our other winner. He got in touch to say, when I was 14, I put the ball down on the 5 metre line and celebrated, thinking I'd scored a try. The opposition picked up the ball, ran the length of the pitch and scored. They won by a couple of points. Adam James and Stephen Elliott, you're both off to enjoy Leinster versus Toulouse tomorrow afternoon. And for anyone who can't make it, it is live, of course, on Off the Ball on the radio on News Talk from 1 o'clock. Ulster versus Racing is also live on the same station from 5:15. Then on Sundays Off the Ball, Stephen Doyle and Kevin Kilban are at Everton versus Bournemouth. And the big one, it's Nathan Murphy and Gary Breen and Brian Kerr, actually, at Wembley for Spurs against Manchester United. We're back on Monday morning from 7:45am. Alan Quinlan will be with us reviewing the weekend's rugby action. Mike Carlton will look back at the NFL games, and we'll also have plenty of reaction, as I say, for Manchester United against Spurs, or Spurs against Manchester United, and all the weekend's Premier League action. We'll chat to you on Monday morning. Bye bye for now.